Solana To Do app. You'll build a To Do Web 3.0 dApp with Next.js on the Solana blockchain. After, you'll learn how to create your program on the Solana blockchain using the Anchor framework called Rust. We'll then show you how you can store the data on chain. Basically, you'll be making a fully decentralized database that'll be verified by Solana. We're going to be using QuickNode as our RPC node provider to access the blockchain. You'll use the Solana Playground to compile and deploy your smart contract. We'll use Phantom Wallet to authenticate our users that sign in. We'll use the Solana Web3 package to interact with our smart contract in the blockchain. It'll make your life a lot easier. Okay. You'll be able to view and confirm these transactions over the Solana Explorer to verify that they are indeed 100% real. Now, before we get started, make sure you smash that like button. Turn it blue, turn it white, whatever you want to do with that button. But just make sure you smash it. We're going to provide you with our own CLI tool, okay? And what that's going to do is going to give you all the front end fully built. So before you even actually write a line of code, okay? All of that is going to be given up front to you. So that way you can focus only on the smart contract and the blockchain part. With that said, I'm going to hand you over to your instructor, Lance, for the rest of this video, who is phenomenal, and he's going to help you build this project on Solana. Get ready to have your mind blown. Take it away, Lance.
What is up, YouTube? It's Lance again. I know it's been a while, but I've been working on this very special app just for you guys. So, as you can see, this is a simple to-do app, but guess what? It's using the Solana blockchain, like Kazi said. So let's just do a quick demo. We already have a deployed app on Netlify, and as you can see, I'm logged in with Phantom. What happens if I'm not logged in though? Let me disconnect, and let's hit refresh. Boom. If you're not connected at all, you won't see an input format here. Like you saw an input field, it's not going to be there anymore. This button is going to be there instead. And another thing is if you want to initialize a user, you won't be able to till you connect your wallet. So let's say I have a new wallet. So let's go to wallet number 1, and let's select the wallet and log in. It's going to ask if this is okay. We're going to hit connect. And as you can see, there's no to-dos, right? Because I just connected my wallet. It then checks on the smart contract if there's any to-do accounts with that. And since there's not any even users, it's not going to get anything. All right, let's see if on our console, if we see anything. All right, it's going to say account does not exist. All right, there's no account with this right here. So what we need to do is initialize an account. So when we initialize account, we always have, whenever we're writing to the blockchain, it's going to take some of our Solana. Let's go ahead and hit approve. And you saw it for a second, it glitched out a bit, but there we go. Right, now we can see the input field. So now we have a user, we should be able to make to do. So let's do our first to do and hit enter. All right, again, whenever we're making a to do account on chain, let's hit approve, and bam, there we go. There's our first to do. But that's not all this can do. It's all managed on the back end, and by back end, Solana blockchain. Let's hit approve to change this to completed. There you go. And we can also delete it. Another cool part, guys, is when you delete it, we actually get some Solana back. The Solana you spent to store that to-do account on chain is now going to get refunded when you close that account. We're not deleting, we're closing that account. So let's hit approve, and bam, it's gone. So that's the demo. I can't wait to get in on all the cool things that I've learned. So let's see and get started coding. All right, guys, so let's get started with the build. The first thing I want you guys to do is open up your terminal and go into the folder that you want to create this project in. Once you're there, all you have to do is type in npx clever programmer at latest. What this does is lets you use our powerful CLI tool that's going to get you guys the starter files that you need to start this project. So let's go ahead and hit enter. And as you can see, all you have to do to use our CLI tool is put in your email. So I'll put Lance at Clever Programmer. I'm gonna put in my name, Lance, and then select the project you want to start. And obviously we did Spotify and TikTok together. Let's go ahead and click Solana to do. And all you have to do now is wait, and you'll see VS Code automatically open up through our CLI tool. So I'll check back in when it's done. All right, so as you can see, it's ready to go, and it opened up VS Code for me. So if you look, this is our Solana To Do app. It's just a Next.js project with a bunch of components, the index and styling already done for you guys. The main reason you clicked on this video is because you want to learn how to create on the Solana blockchain. So we're not going to focus too much on the Next.js part. You guys know how to build a To Do app, but if you do want to learn how to build a regular Next.js To Do app, come check out our other videos on that topic. Here, we're just gonna show you what this to-do app looks like with Next.js and how to implement a Solana backend. And when I say backend, the Solana blockchain, okay? So let's take a look around. If you don't have any node modules for whatever reason, you can go ahead and open your terminal and type in cd into the app and type in yarn to install all those modules. As you can see, I have them, so I'm good to go. Another thing that you could do while you're here is go ahead and type in the command yarndev if you want to run the project locally. So I'm gonna write yarndev and let me just set up my windows real quick. All right, so all I did was move my code to the side and put my window here, and I could just type in localhost 3000 and let's see the app. Voila, beautiful nothing app. Like I said, it just contains the starter files. But if you did want to see it, we're gonna have this initialize button right here. So let's take a look. See, you have this initialize button. When we first open up the app, you don't have an account just yet. You'll have a Phantom wallet, which I'll talk about later, but you won't have an account just yet. I demoed this earlier, but for now, it has a static initialize. You can see there's already to-do items. We can mark the to-do, we can delete that to-do, and just like the demo previously. If you notice though, if I refresh, that whole thing gets reset, right? Because again, this is static data. There is no backend to this. So with that said, you guys are all set up with the starter files. Like I said, we want to take our regular app and implement a Solana backend to it. But before we get to that, we should understand how our app works. So when I change stuff, you're not completely lost. You with me? Cool. So if you guys have experience with any React app or Next.js app, let's understand the parent and child relationship of the components. Okay. So if you look under the pages folder of your app and you see something that says underscore, this is what I'll call the top level component. As you can see, I already have some notes here. This is where we're gonna connect our Phantom wallet to our app, and we're gonna put it and wrap it around this component here, because this component right here is the HTML of our entire app. Okay? So if the app is the top level component, let's draw that out. Ready? So if I'm gonna make a little square here, this is our app. All right, app. Okay, so if that's the top level component, what is the child of app? Can you guys tell me? You got it. It would be component. But we're not gonna draw a child and we're not gonna call it component. Technically, this component is index.js. You could view it as this index.js. But what does this index.js have? So if app is the top level component and we're putting our entire app in here, inside this app lives, oh, there's an arrow on this. So let me draw an arrow. All right, inside this app, his child, let's undo there. It's right here, index.js. So then you might be asking yourself, Lance, what's in the index.js? Let's take a look. All right, if the index.js is this whole entire app, should I be able to see the input in that app? Yes or no? Yes. Should I be able to see this to-do item? Yes. Should I be able to see this whole section? Yes. That's all in this index.js. Can I prove it to you? Let me show you. So I'm just gonna go erase that. Let's take a look. All right, so let's look for this input field that I created. So if you look, there it is on line 20. There's the input field. If I were to erase this, save, it's gone, right? Just the CSS on the background is there. Okay, but now if I ask you guys, where in the code can you find me this guy, learn front end? Let's find that piece of code. All right, so I'm scrolling, and I reach the end. I don't see it, but what's this? You have loading, right, which is another component I made. And within that, it's wrapped around to do section. What's to do section? What do you guys think? Let's take a look. See, this is how you can read and understand somebody else's code. So to do section is a component that lives inside index, but what does it do? Okay, so these are called props. I'm passing a to-dos prop, and I'm passing incomplete to-dos and completed to-dos. If the developer has good naming convention, it should be easier to understand. So it says incomplete and completed. Which of these is the incomplete? Which of these is the completed, right? So this is the incomplete. Well, that's big. Let's go undo. That's the incomplete, and this is the completed, right? So how many to-do sections do we have? Yes, you got it. There's 2 to-do sections. So let me prove it to you guys. Look at that. There's 1 to-do section and there's 2 to-do sections. Did I make 2 separate ones that create 2 components? No, I reuse the components. That's kind of the power with React here. I was able to reuse one component and pass it 2 different props. All right, you see that? And complete it. Cool. So let's illustrate that relationship right here. So let's draw another rectangle. We'll actually just use our arrows first. I like the arrows. Let's draw it right here. Boom and boom. Right. One is to do section, and the other is also a to do section. Right. Okay. To do section, and let's move it. Ooh. To do section. Can I paste it? Nope. Awesome. So do another one. To do section. Okay. This one though has completed, and this one has incomplete, and we're passing it as to do. So does everyone understand this relationship so far? The top level app contains the index component, and the index contains two to-do sections, one with incomplete to-dos, one with completed to-do. So then let's figure out what's inside this to-do section. And just to show you guys, what does this to-do section mean? I'm gonna switch around my windows real quick. All right, so I just switched the windows around. Let me draw out for you guys what is to-do section. So this to-do section right here, the incomplete one, is literally this section right here. All right, what about this one, the completed one? It's this right here. They have similar CSS. I'm just using it for 2 different purposes. One holds incomplete, one holds completed. Got it? But there's components that live inside here. There's one more component in here. So let's take a look at that. So to take a look at what components are in there, we can go to our VS Code. This is called to do section, right? We can go into the components folder, go into to do, and let's click to do section. And as you can see, it's kind of hard to see because of my little drawing, but in to do section, there is to do list is getting passed down the incomplete or the completed to dos. So let me draw that out for you. Okay, so you can see the H1 right here, kind of hard to see, but that's the tasks here, that's the completed here. Okay, but to do list, what's to do list? If I scroll down so you don't hurt your eyes anymore. To do list, let's change it to this color right here. To do list is just these guys, right? There's another component that holds the list of to-dos, right? And I'm gonna draw the outline on this too. Okay, cool. And if you already understand all these React concepts, go ahead, skip the video to when I start connecting the Phantom wallet. Okay, so every to-do section will have a to-do list. That's essentially what I'm saying. So this has a to-do list, this has a to-do list. Okay, I'm gonna draw that out now. Boom, and boom. Okay, now let's add some text. To-do list, and also a to-do list. These are both one component, but they're holding different things. This is holding incomplete, still completed, right? Not confused yet. So that's the to-do list. Okay. Without going into my code, if this blue here is to-do list, is there any components inside of this box right here? Can you see one? All right, you got it. If you said this right here, this to-do item, you freaking got it. That is another component. And again, we're reusing that component right here. Same component. I didn't make a whole new HTML and CSS just for that. So essentially, for every incomplete to-do that we pass down here, for every to-do, create one to-do item. So in other words, if there's 4 incomplete to-dos, guys, how many to-do items are we making? 4. Exactly. So you can look at it like this. Within this to-do list, if I draw, where's my arrow? There's gonna be 4 to-do items. How many completed to-dos are in this to-do list? You got it, there's 2. This one will have 2, right? And then I'll just draw the squares. It's gonna look like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And that right there is the parent and child relationship of the component, right? So if I got where did I get my incomplete to-dos from? So this guy right here. Oops, let me get my pencil. So if I ask you guys this, right? You have the visual, save this picture if you're gonna get confused later. But if I ask you guys, where did this incomplete to-dos come from? Do you think did I make it in to-do list? No. Did I make that incomplete to-do in my to-do item? No, I didn't make it there. It didn't just appear here, it actually came from index. So if I asked you, how can I change the incomplete to-dos? Where are we looking? We're looking right in here if I want to change the incomplete to-dos. And that's why I made you go through this. I know that was a lot, but if you survived and you understand everything I'm saying, we are in great shape, guys. And if you didn't get it, don't worry. Just rewind, play it again, maybe draw it out yourself. But this is a relationship. Save this, and I'm gonna be referring to this relationship later in the video. Cool. So if you got that, let's get started with the Web3. Awesome. So another question that you guys might have is, where did those incomplete to-dos come from? As you can see, we passed in those incomplete and complete to-dos as the word to do. But if we go up a level, if you remember the to-do section, right, there was index, I believe. So let's go here. And on index, we passed those to-dos with the incompleted ones and the completed ones. But where the hell, Lance, did these come from? I asked you guys, it says it comes from index. So let's scroll to the top of index and let's look at line 9. And if you look at all these things, add static input, initialize static user, you'll see completed to-dos and incompleted to-dos. I don't know why it keeps doing that. Sorry, guys. Completed to-dos and incomplete to-dos. But where do those come from? So if you keep scrolling to the right, you're going to see that it's going to be equal to use to do, right? Use to do is our custom hook that we also gave you guys. And that is where a lot of the logic of connecting our app is going to go. So where does use to do come from? As you can see, it's highlighted in line 2. Import that hook from our hooks folder and get the to.js. So let's figure out what that is. So if we go to our hooks folder, click to do.js here, you can see, right, a lot of code, right? But this is where a lot of the logic lives. So this is where our states live. This is where our data lives, our static data. This is where our use effect lives. And we can just store it here and only import what we need to our main app. You with me? Awesome. So if you look at line 13, this is where our static data lives. And it mocks how the Solana blockchain data is stored, right? So it's an array of objects, right? And this first object is a to-do item, right? So there's going to be an account, and that account has an object that has the index, the content, and the marked. So if I wanted to change learn front end to something else, let's say I don't like it, all I have to do is change this right here, right now to learn Solana, right? Let's save it there. Boom, it changed. It's not learn front end anymore. Awesome. Let's say I change the mark to true. Let's change it to true. Look at that, learn Solana is down here and completed. How did it do that automatically, Lance? That's magic. All right, well, luckily for you, we already set that up. So if you scroll all the way to the bottom, as you can see, there's all the states, there's our use effect, there's the functions that we're gonna make for the blockchain later. But I want you to look at this, line 146. The incomplete to-dos is a variable where I'm gonna filter our static data, and if it's incomplete, make a new array of to-dos with only the incomplete. Same thing with the completed here, right? This time the filter is for the completed ones, right? And that's why, right, if you take those variables, come to 149, return anything you want to bring outside of this JS file. So I want to bring all of these things, including the incomplete, the completed and the incomplete to-dos. And that's where they're coming from. So if that's a question you might have, that's where there you go. If you want to add more functions to bring out, we're going to add them to this line right here. So we're going to change these static to-do functions into normal functions, okay, to deal with the data that we're going to put on the Solana chain. Cool. So now that's out of the way, I want to set up some things that we're going to need to talk to the blockchain. And one of those things, it's called an endpoint. So if I get to draw this visually, we have our app. This is this square. And then we have, let's draw a different color. We have the Solana blockchain right here. All right, so let's draw it out. The Solana blockchain. And we have, let's bring it back to this color, our app. So if this is where it is, how can we talk to the Solana blockchain? How can we even get data from here? All right, we're gonna need something called an endpoint, right? So we need an endpoint, right? An endpoint is basically a node that lives on the blockchain that we can connect to and retrieve any data from it. So our endpoint of today, we're gonna be using QuickNode. Right? If you guys haven't heard of QuickNode before, if you remember our Spotify video, to get started with QuickNode, go ahead and click the link in the description so that you can sign up and start using their endpoint. And the cool thing about QuickNote is that they just released a free tier, so no need to put in your credit card. All you have to do is sign up by putting in your name. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and I'm going to hit create account. There you go. So I successfully created an account, and all you have to do is resend your verification email so that you can create your endpoint. And that's one of the awesome things about QuickNote. They make it nice and easy for you to connect to the chain, and they provide support for Solana because only a few endpoints provide Solana at this current point in time. So I'm going to verify my email real quick, and I'll jump right back in. Nice. So now that I'm all verified with my email, make sure you create an endpoint and click Solana. And as you can see, QuickNote provides support for a lot of different chains. You can see Ethereum, Binance, even Bitcoin at the moment. So let's go ahead and click Solana because that's what we're working on. And the main thing here is that we're working on the Devnet. If you're not sure what the Devnet is, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a playground for anyone who wants to test stuff or learn stuff. And it says it right here. You can test users, token holders, app developers, or validators. So let's hit that one and hit continue. And bam, configure any add-ons, right? QuickNote also has an NFT fetch tool. We don't need that for this specific project. Let's just go ahead and hit continue. And as you can see, there's different plans, right? We can just go ahead and click continue, right? And if you ever wanted to make even bigger projects, if you're a company, a startup out there, and you know that you need to make more calls or you want even faster performance, they have other plans out there that might be best suited for you. For us beginners though, we're going to be using their free plan, and let's go ahead and go to endpoint. And there we go, we have it. So the HTTP provider and the WSS provider is what we're going to be using for later. So keep that tab open. We're set up with QuickNote. The next thing we're going to need to use to set up is something called Phantom Wallet. If you guys are coming from Solidity or Ethereum, this is your version, Solana's version of MetaMask. So if you go to Phantom extension, you're going to be taken to this Google Chrome store. Go ahead and install it from Chrome. Awesome. Once you're done, you can go ahead and click Phantom and then create your wallet. You can name it whatever you want, but the main thing is click on the settings right here and make sure, right? You can see currently connected on Devnet. It's not going to be that by default. So what you're going to need to do is change your network and make sure you're on Devnet. If you put Devnet for QuickNode, you should put Devnet for Phantom, right? Because that's what you want to connect to. So I'm on Devnet. I have Phantom downloaded. I have the extension. And now let's get to coding. So now that we're going to get started with coding, let's say you're coding this project up and you made a mistake and you want to revert back to an old version. That's where version control comes in. So if you realize with our CLI tool, you actually just get cloned automatically. So if you look at my app, let's press Control J or Command J, and let's just kill the terminal. And then let's try to git push, right? If I git push, it's gonna say everything up to date for me because I have permission on this repo. But if you guys did git push, you're gonna notice that it's gonna fail because you don't have access to push to our repo. So what you guys should do is let's show you guys how to make your very own repo with these files. That way you can save any version that you make and revert back if you need to. All right, and this is good practice if you want to become a developer. So what you need to do is get over to GitHub and let's go ahead and create a repo. There's multiple ways to create your own repo. You can do it within the command line. You can even use Git Kraken if you have it, right? But for my beginners out there, all you have to do is create a new repository like this. Okay, so for this repository name, I'm gonna say Solana To Do App, right? Cool. And after that's done, you don't have to put a description. You can make it public and you don't have to put any of this stuff, because if you don't put any of those things and you click create repository and you ever get lost, GitHub is nice enough to tell you how to make a new repo on the command line, vice versa. What I'm going to show you though is how to take this current repo, right, from our VS Code, this one right here, and push it to this repo to make it your own. Okay, so to do that, it's very simple. Let's go ahead and make this guy bigger now. And within here, we're just going to write simple command git remote set, git remote space set dash URL origin. All right, I'm creating a new origin to push these changes to. So all I have to do after the word origin is click space, and then I will need the link from this one. Copy this link right here, copy it, and then you can go back to your command line and right click, and I'm gonna hit enter, and there you go. So if I say git status now, right, you're gonna see that the package JSON changed and the hooks changed, because I remember I modified that hook. So all you have to do is do these simple commands, do git add dot, right? And if you do git status again, you'll see that those files changes have been added, but you still have to commit them. So I can say updated static data, right? And then we can do a git push. Okay, now if I refresh here, look at that. This is my own repo, right? This should have worked for you. And don't worry, you didn't steal code. You can see over here, our boy David, one of our developers, is one of a contributor. It's because he set up this nice project for us. And you can see our comment here at updated static data is within that app, and you can see it's within the hooks, right? With that, you have your own repo. You don't have to be scared about losing code or messing it up. You can always revert and do some version control with GitHub. So that's my quick lesson on GitHub. Another reason we set this up is because we can actually deploy our projects right away, as you saw in the demo. Okay, and to do that, we're gonna be using Netlify. So I'm gonna go ahead and click the Netlify link in the description, where it's gonna be ntl.fyi/clever, and it'll lead you to this page. And if you don't have an account, go ahead and sign up now using this link. And after that, I'll meet back up with you. Awesome. So I'm all logged in and everything. While you're here, make sure you connect to GitHub with your Netlify account, because it's about to make this next step a lot easier. What I'm about to do is make it so that I'm going to deploy our project right here, right now. And every time we push a change to GitHub, the live site will also update. So we don't have to redeploy or anything like that. Netlify takes care of it. So what you need to do is make sure you install Netlify, right? By saying npm install netlify-g. What this does is installs the Netlify CLI tool globally so that you can use their commands. So I already have it, but I'm gonna install it with you guys just because I wanna be a part of it. All right, once that's done, you can go ahead and type in the word Netlify in your command line. All right, if you type this, you can see all the different commands that you have access to now that you have this installed. All right, the one that we wanna look at is this one, login. We're logged in here, but you wanna log in through here just in case. And instead of writing Netlify, there's actually a cool shortcut you could do. You can just write NTL. And then all of a sudden you can just type in the command you want. So I want login, right? This will make sure that I'm logged in through the CLI, right? So already logged in. And if you're not, go ahead and do that now. Awesome. So I'm already logged in. The next thing you need to do is to initialize it. So let's do NTL init. Hey, there we go. So you see these options. What would you like to do? We want to create and configure a brand new site. So let's hit enter. Okay. Let me bring this up. Right, it's going to ask you about the team, right? I only have my own team. Right, and here is where you put the site name. So I'll call it Solana To Do. All right, keeping it the same naming convention. Hit enter. Boom. And now it's going to say what's the base directory. Right, you're going to see projects front end. You're going to see projects front end. Make sure this is at the app. So hit enter. Right, your build command. It's a next app, so it's going to be next build. All right, directory to deploy, and it should be the current directory that you're on. So make sure you're doing this in the app folder. Okay, I'm gonna enter here, and there's an essential Next.js plugin. We can just hit Y and hit enter. Okay, cool. So now the next steps is what we have to do is write in a git push. Okay. Oh, and yeah, every time, like I said, every time we push new changes, then it will redeploy it live. So let's just make a change here. A quick one. We're gonna go into todo.js. I'm gonna add a space, and that's considered a change. So we can do a git status, and you'll see, right? Well, one, the git ignore is changed, but also the todo.js. So let's hit save, git status again. There you go, todo.js. So we'll just add those changes, commit those changes, right? And for this commit message, we can say add Netlify CLI. All right, and then we do a git push. Awesome. So now it's pushed. It should trigger the deployment of our site. So let's hit refresh here, and we can see Solana To Do App, right? And we'll take a look. And now we will wait for it to deploy. Alrighty, so it looks like after some time, the deployment is done. And if you see this link right here, you can literally send this link and put it on your portfolio, and it will show you the app live. All right, so if I hit initialize, bam, right? This is a live link. Every time I push my changes, this will also get updated. So that is awesome. All right, so we don't need to worry about any other setup. We can now worry about setting up the Solana part of this now. All right, so let's clean up a little bit over here. This is our live link. That's not reflective of our current changes at the moment. So I'm just gonna X out all the tabs we won't need. You can X this out. We'll save this for later, but here we go. So if we do Yarndev again, all right, we can refresh this now, and bam. So one thing that this app is currently missing is that Phantom wallet connection that I was talking about earlier. The idea is that we want to connect our Phantom wallet. There should be a button right over here that's going to show what Phantom wallet's connected, and it's going to ask us to connect in the first place. Okay, so that's what we're going to set up now. So let's go ahead and do that. One of the first things that we're going to need to do is make this smaller and extend our code, because we're going to be focused on the code now. And let's go ahead and press Command B or Control B and go to your components. And in your components folder, we're gonna make a new file, and we're gonna call this wallet connect provider.js. Okay, cool. So again, we're not gonna focus too much on the React part. What we wanna do is import a couple different things. We're gonna import wallet adapter network, right? From Solana wallet adapter base, right? What these next couple imports are all essential so that we can connect any Solana wallet to our app. Specifically, we're going to be using Phantom. Okay, from there, we're going to import and destructure. We're going to get connection provider. I'm not going to hit tab yet because there's another thing I want to import, and wallet provider. Okay, those are the two things we're going to need. And this is going to come from Solana /wallet adapter base. Oh, adapter React actually. There's a couple different ones. Wallet, adapter, and then React. Okay. The next one is going to be import wallet modal provider. Right. This is how we get the modal from @Solana wallet React UI, I believe. Yep. There you go. Next one. This one's kind of a beefy one. This one's going to be import glow wallet adapter. We also got Phantom wallet adapter, and we're going to use slope wallet adapter. So these are the other wallets, but again, just in case you guys want to use a different one, but I just want these three, and I'll stop right there. Wallet adapter. Yep, yeah. So we're not going to use all of these. We're just going to use one. We're going to do from @Solana wallet adapter wallets. Right, so these are all the wallets, right? If you wanted to use a different one, you could, but we're pretty much going to use this one only. Okay, and let's see, is there anything else? There is import, oh yeah, cluster API URL from Solana Web3.js. Awesome, there we go, cool. So to get started with this, oh, and also there's a one React hook we'll need, and if you're familiar with it, it's going to be that use memo again. Okay, from React. Let's go. All right, so we got all the imports out of the way. Now for the actual code, what we're gonna do is write export const, and then we're gonna write wallet connection provider, right? Wallet connect provider. If you remember, this is what we're gonna wrap around the app, the whole app, so that we can use all these imports and make it really easy. I don't have to write any login logic at all. We're just importing everything we need, and it's gonna do it all for us. You're gonna see it's pretty awesome. So wallet connect provider, that's what I'm going to call it, and it's going to take in a function with the argument of children, and we're going to do, it's going to be an arrow function, and there we go. All right, there's our wallet connect provider, and from here we can say const network, and it's going to equal wallet adapter network, right? So now we're making use of that first. This is where we define what network we're on, and by network I mean testnet, devnet, mainnet. So if you remember from earlier, we're on the devnet, and that's our network, right? This next point, all right, we're gonna say const endpoint equals use memo, right? And then inside use memo, it takes in an arrow function, boom, and then say if network, right, is equal to wallet adapter network dot devnet. So what is this saying? I'm just saying if my network is devnet, right, then we should return our endpoint. And here is where we can actually use that quick note endpoint. Oh, we gotta make this bigger so you can actually see it. There you go. We can copy this, and that's it. All right, that's where quick note comes in clutch. We can just put in a string here and paste that in there. That is our network, right? It's called cold weathered layer. Yours might be different, right? But this is how we can connect to the chain. All right, amazing. So now that QuickNote's already set up and ready to go, all we have to do is go below here in between this curly bracket and parenthesis. We're gonna put, actually, no, we have to return something first. We have to return that cluster API URL and pass in network because that's the Devnet, all right? And over here, let's see, am I missing something? Nope, comma, and then we can say bracket network. There we go, awesome. So there it is, conditional statement. If it's Devnet, we'll use this endpoint. That's all it is, okay? And then return this, and there we go. Okay, cool. So this is still without in the connection provider. We want to make a variable here called wallets, right? And we say equals use memo. And again, memo takes in that anonymous function. And all we have to write in here is just new phantom wallet adapter. And then put this right here. So let's say you don't want to use phantom, you want to give people options, right? This is also a cool thing. If you want to give them options that have glow, you can say new glow wallet adapter, like here, and then don't forget the parentheses, okay? So that's what you have to do if you want to do that. But I don't have to because I'm just using phantom, and this actually should all be an array now that I'm thinking about it. So yeah, put all the wallets you want to put in that array, and you should be good to go. Okay, I'm trying to see if there's anything else. Oh yeah, we do need this comma network though. Okay, cool. And I know I'm writing a lot of code, but we're gonna see if this works or if this is causing any errors once I set it up. Yep, so for example, wallets was spelled wrong. Wallets, there you go, cool. All right, still within this curly bracket, we want to return something. We're gonna return, and here is where all the other imports are gonna come into play, right? We wanna make it so if I click this button, a modal will pop up with the wallets, and then I can click on Phantom to connect to it. So to set up all of that, we don't have to write anything necessarily besides just using it. So let's set up our connection provider. Here's where we put in our endpoint. We can say endpoint, pass that in as a prop. Then we can get our wallet provider. Yep, just like that. And if you type in wallets, pass in all the wallets that we're using. We're only using one. And this another cool thing you can also write here is auto connect. So if it's already connected, like it's already established that you connected it before, it will automatically connect it, which is pretty sick. So now we can do wallet modal provider, right? So this is the modal part of our wallet, and we can pass in the children. Yes, okay, and that's it. I believe that's everything we'll need. And if there's anything that comes up error-wise, we'll see it when I try to set this up. All right, so we're not completely done. We set up the component, but it's not being in use just yet. So like I said, we want to wrap this whole provider around in our entire app. So if you remember our little tree that we drew, it's going to be under pages, and underscore app is where we want to do all of the magic. So the first thing that was needed is we need to import that wallet connection or connect provider, right? From components / wallet connect provider. I'm pretty sure it's the same name. If there is an error, it's probably going to be a spelling one. And another thing that we're going to need is the Solana wallet CSS that we need to import. So that is going to be import at Solana wallet adapter react. It's not this, it's UI to get the UI, and then you need the styles.css. Without it, it's going to look really funny. It's just a button. So let's hit save. All right. Yep. And we're not wrapping it just yet. So let's wrap it. Let's say wallet connect provider, and let's wrap the entire thing. Okay, cool. And if I hit save, look at that. So something popped up when I hit save. My Phantom wallet automatically is asking me to log in, saying enter my password. The cool thing is it's doing this, but we don't have an actual button associated with it just yet. So let's add that button now. And to add that button, if you remember, if that button's not an app, where should it be? It should be next to this initialize button and the input. So if you don't know, it's actually going to be an index, right? If we take a look at the code, if you want to understand it, if there's somebody initialized, then load that input that you saw. If initialized is false, it's a state, then you should see the initialize button. And then to the next to that initialize button, right, or the exact spot where I want it to be right here is this right here, wallet multi button. Okay, what is wallet multi button, Lance? I'm glad you asked. Well, it's something we imported from Solana wallet adapter, which is essentially what's allowing us to have a button right there. So let's save this right here. Hey, there we go. You see it? Select wallet, right? So this is possible because of that provider. So if we go back to app.js real quickly, guys, and we remove the Solana wallet CSS, for example, look at that, it's ugly. But since we imported the CSS, it's nice. And all of that wallet connect provider code that we selected or set up is connected to this button. I didn't have to write no logic. I just had to set up some boilerplate code. Isn't that awesome? So if I click select wallet, here is the detected wallets, right? Just the phantom one. Connect. It should ask me to log in actually. So let's put test 1, 2, 3, 4, and bam. So it's connecting. Let's see if it refreshes. There you go. So now I'm connected, right? So this wallet is officially connected to the app, right? If I were to disconnect it and I switch my wallet, the cool thing about Phantom, you can actually have multiple wallets. If I go to wallet 3, right? This is CHC3K. Select wallet. Boom, CH3K. So now I'm connected to wallet number 2. All right, so whatever wallet you want to log in with, go ahead and do that. I'm gonna stick with 4 since that was the one we were using before. No pun intended. So connect and bam, there we go. We have a Phantom login button. All right, so now that Phantom is connected to our app, we have the ability to run transactions using our wallet. As you can see, I can actually spend my 4 Solana with our app now. So later in the video, I want to show you how to get more test Solana, but for now, let me show you the latest technology right here, and it's called Solana Playground. So if I make this a little smaller, you can see this is what you'll call the smart contract. For the people coming from Solidity, this is like Remix. You can write your smart contract here and deploy it to the blockchain, and then later in the video, I'll show you guys how to connect it with our front end app. Got it? Cool. So typically with a smart contract, you wouldn't make a to-do app as the contract, but we're going to use that for my beginners out there to understand how the smart contract works. Okay. So what I'll here, let me just give you a quick tour. This is going to be the ID of our program. And here is the actual program itself, right? In Solana, they're called programs. So here, this is the hello anchor, the default program, and it has one function and it's called initialize. Okay. And every function usually comes with a struct. So this is the initialize function, and here's the initialize struct, right? And this is what this contains, right? A new account, assigner, system program. Don't worry, we'll go into more detail later. But what I want you guys to do right now is let's select all of it and let's go ahead and click delete because we're gonna do this from scratch. Let's hit delete, and there we go. Cool. So another thing that I'm gonna do is I'm going to create a couple different files, and you don't have to understand what they do just yet. These are what I'll call given files. So let's get started. All right, so I added the given files that we'll need. So I'll make this smaller because we can full screen this now because we're not gonna write any code with our next app. Like I said, that's done. We just gotta set up the back end. So we can make this smaller for now, but let's take a little bit of a tour. So if I open this up, you're gonna see 3 extra files on top of the lib.rs. Lib.rs, think of this as the main file. All the smart contract logic goes here. Think of the rest of these files, right? Like constant, error, and states. Think of these as modules that I'm gonna import to the lib.rs. So if you think about it that way, then you can, let's take a look at them. So if you look at constant.rs, you can see there's some code in there, same thing with error, same thing with states, right? What you need to know is understand what they're for. So the easiest one to understand is error.rs, right? Error is a file that holds all the error messages. How do I know? It's because right here it says message already marked, and that's the error name, right? That's all it's doing. For example, if I were to do as completed, right? Initialize, mark this as completed. Can I mark this as completed again? No. So we should get an error message that says already marked. And that's what this is doing. It's holding all those types of errors we could run into. If you have more, you can add one right here. Just copy this same format, okay? Another thing that's easy to understand is something called states.rs. The name of this file doesn't matter that much. You can change this to extra structs, more.rs. And then you understand is what the hell is a user profile and what the hell is a to-do account. Again, if you want to learn how to read someone else's code, if you look at to-do count here, it has a type of U8, right? When you're working with Rust or Anchor, if you're familiar with TypeScript at all, it shows you the type of this, what I'll call key for now. So U8 means unsigned integer of 8 bytes, right? So it's a small, for you to understand what this is, think of to-do count. What is to-do count? If there's a user with to-do count, what does that mean? So if my user has a to-do count of 0, how many to-dos does it have? It has 0 to-dos, right? So this is just a number that shows how many to-dos does this user have, what was their last to-do count, like number, and what's their authority. And I'll dive into more on authority later, but that's what user profile. Think of it as the user that's logged in, because if I connect my wallet, should I see Kazi's to-do or should I see my to-dos? My to-dos, right? So we have to generate a unique user profile on the backend. You with me so far? So with that logic, what's to-do account, right? So if we look at the naming here, content is similar to our static data, right? Content was like the learn Solana, right? What is the task? IDX is the index, and marked is a Boolean. So if it's a Boolean, that means it could be true or false. So now do you see where the static data helps us now? So this represents one to do, right? For every to do item, we want to make an account on the blockchain, right? So we can have several to do accounts, and each to do account is going to hold this information. And there's also several user profiles that can generate their to do accounts. They have the authority. So the authority of this to do account is going to depend on the author. We're going to store who made that to do as well. Okay. User profile struct, to do account struct. Okay. Next thing is the constants.rs. You don't need to worry too much about this, but we're going to use this later when it comes to seeds. So just remember user state and to do state for testing purposes later. Cool. So with that out of the way, that's the introduction. The cool part about Solana Playground is that you don't have to install Anchor to your VS Code. You can build and deploy it from here. You can also test your functions, and that's what's super powerful. I actually know the lead developer for this. His name is Acharon, and he has helped me and walked me through how to use this. Okay, cool. So shout outs to Acharon. The main thing that I want to go over with you now is let's start coding the contract. All right, so if you want to get started writing up your smart contract, the first thing you got to write in line 1 is something called use anchor lang prelude. So let's break this down so far. I'm not going to go over every single thing because sometimes you need to understand Rust to fully understand it. But what you can understand about anchor lang is that it's a library, right? I want to use this library, and when I do colon, it's basically saying give me everything in anchor lang and get me prelude. This could be different things. This could be signer. There's different things that you can get from anchor lang, but prelude is going to give you a lot of different things that we can use all at once. So then if I do : star, I'm saying get me everything from prelude. All right, that's all it is. Don't look too much into it. Usually if you see the other files, it's using that same library. You with me? Cool. So next thing you want to do is, as you can see, we have error, we have constants, we have states, but do they exist in the lib.rs just right now? They don't. So how do we bring them into the lib.rs? I'm glad you asked, because it's going to be pub mod for module constant. And one thing I'll say this right now is with Rust and Anchor, which is the language that the Solana runs in natively, you have to put these semicolons, right? We got away with these in JavaScript where we don't have to put them. But with some languages, you need to put a semicolon to indicate that it's the end of the coding line. So if you don't have this, you'll get an error. So go ahead and add pub mod constant, and then to get the rest of them, I'm going to type them in. Okay, then pub mod states. There you go. Cool. So we have these 3 files, but one thing, if you want to use something from constants, let's say, for example, I want to get this variable user. In order to use it in lib.rs, I would have to say constant : user tag to use it. Get me user tag from constant. But that could be annoying, because especially if I write some long piece of code, it could look really hard to read. The readability goes down. But if you don't want to do, there's a nice thing called use crate, right? It's basically, you can look at this as destructuring, if that makes sense to you. We can say use crate : constant : star. Right? We can get everything from constant, and then we can say comma error, right? : star. Same thing with states : star. Perfect. And semicolon right there. So basically, when you use crate, if you don't know, if you guys know what package JSON is, right? Crate is essentially your NPM packages, right? So this is the modules that I want to use. Get me everything from those modules. So instead of writing constant : user tag, I can just say user tag _ tag, and it knows what I'm talking about. That's all that's happening from lines 1 through 6, right? Use crate puts these guys into this scope. Awesome. Another standard thing that it has is a declare underscore ID and then a bang here. Here, you're gonna put in whatever program ID this comes with. I have the finish code, right? Over here, I save the ID. If you wanna use my program ID, you'd put this, but you should generate your own program ID, right? So if I were to go to build, go to extra, right? Go to program, you can get a new one by clicking new here, right? But there's nothing in the smart contract yet, so let's not build anything. So for now, we can leave this blank. Okay, this is just gonna tell us, hey, what's the ID of this program? Awesome. So now let's get to the actual smart contract itself, we can call it. We can do hashtag square, like brackets program, right? Every time you see like a hashtag brackets and then something in here, that's what you call a macro. All right, a macro is just something that's Rust specific, and underneath this, there's a bunch of under the hood code that makes things a lot easier for us. It's pretty powerful. Think of it like a black box, and if you look into that black box, it does a bunch of different things, right? We could spend a whole lesson on the different macros, but I would refer to the Anchor docs if you want to understand more about this. I'm only going to tell you what you need to know. So what you need to know about program is that everything underneath this right here is related to this program. So we can say pub mod and then the name of your program. I'll call it clever to do, and then put curly brackets right there. And everything within this scope is part of our smart contract, you could say. Okay, so what do we want to do with this smart contract? Let's do some pseudocode, guys. All right, so in our front end, what are we doing? That's what a good question asks. If you want to make it all backend specific, and by backend I mean blockchain, what kind of features do we need? So let's hit refresh, right? So one thing I'll notice is that we'll need this button right here on the blockchain as well in our contract. We need to be able to initialize the user, right? So we need to be able to initialize the user. So let's write that, initialize a user, right? What should that initialize user do? It should add a user profile, right? Remember what a user profile is, right? It's something we keep track of, to the blockchain, right? And, right, we don't want to just add a user profile, because if you look at our states, is there a number associated with to-do count? No, it just says it has a type of U8, but it could start at 5, it could start at 0. We can say add values, right? For the default data. Do you know what I mean by that? For the default data, the to-do count, when I first initialize a user, should be 0. Right? The last to do, 0. Authority, that's gonna be your wallet address. So if I click this, select wallet, it's gonna be this. That's our authority. Cool. So we want to initialize that in our function. What else do we want to do with this smart contract? We want to, let's take a look, be able to add a to-do. Add a to-do. Right now, it's done statically. We want to be able to add a to-do, but where are we adding a to-do towards? We want to add a to-do to the blockchain. Do we have any structure that represents a to-do? We do. It's going to be in states. So, right, we want to add a to-do. And we'll flesh all of these out later on. We want to add a to-do. Can you think of anything else? We want to be able to mark a to-do as completed. Add a to-do is done, right? Mark a to-do. And this is something cool, right? There's actually a way to remove a to-do from the blockchain. If you know anything about blockchain at all, you can't actually delete data, like remove data from the blockchain, but there is a workaround to remove the to-do so you don't see it anymore, right? You can close the PDA, the profile derive account, right? You're gonna hear me say PDA a couple times. All right, so these are the 3 main functions that we wanna create. And like you saw earlier, we wanna create structs for each of these functions, okay? So the process that we're gonna do is create the function, create the struct, and then test. That's how you should be making and crafting these contracts. Okay, so cool. So let's talk about initializing a user. So one of the first things we can do, I can delete all this for now, all right, just so we don't get lost in the sauce. So we have all of the logic within this scope. Can I use anything from these libraries in this scope? All right, if you said no, you're correct. Why can't I use user tag in here, for example? That's because use crate brings it to this scope, everything up here. If you want to bring it into this scope, you're going to do something called use super, right? And then do : star and then semicolon, right? Use crate brings everything to this scope. Use super lets you bring everything into this scope. So now you can say user tag here and it knows what it's doing. If you don't have this, let's say it's gone, you'd have to do the constant : thing again. Then it knows what it's talking about. All right, it's just a way to import them into the scope. And another thing I want to point out, you don't have to make separate files. You can technically put everything inline like this. So constant and then say user tag, right? Const to user. And basically this is how we did Spotify and TikTok. We're getting better, we're improving. So we don't need to do this inline, but you could if you want to. Okay, awesome. So we have use super, we're good to go on that. All right, we can hit enter here. And to make a function on Anchor, you can say pub fn, this represents a function, right? And say initialize underscore user, right? The naming doesn't matter. You can call it whatever, but it's just like any other function. So this is an argument here, or you can put arguments here. So I'm just gonna format it like so. And what does it take in? It's gonna take in context, right? And because we're specifying the type, the context is what? The context that it's expecting is something called initialize user, right? There's usually a struct associated with the function. Not every time. This could actually be blank, but this time we want to give context on what initializing a user is. Okay, so it's going to take in some context, and then from there you want to do dash arrow, and then result. Right? What do we get from this? The result is written like this, and here we define what this function does. So other than this result here or putting the type, it's just like a function in JavaScript. Right here is where we write the logic, right? So it'd be like write logic here. You with me? I hope it's not too bad, guys. All right, so what we want to do here is initialize, let me put space, initialize user profile with default data. Okay, you guys know what this means? This means put the to do get the user profile and mark it as 0. So if I were to do pseudocode, do I have access to user profile here? You might say yes, because we're importing states, but I'd say not yet, because I need to do something with our argument, our context. But does initialize user exist? Nah, it doesn't exist yet. So let's make it exist. So right now we have what I'll call the skeleton of the function. It's all set up. We just have to write the logic. But before we can write the logic, we want to do something with this struct. So let's define a struct right now. So I'm going to wait a second. Okay. And now let's make a struct. And to make a struct, you want to have this right here. So we want to derive parentheses accounts, right? And again, this is a macro, and you don't have to entirely fully understand what this does yet. If you did want to learn more, you can search up this macro on Anchor documents. But I'm only going to tell you what you need to know. And what I need to know is that you also want another one here called instruction parentheses. All right. Everything that comes from this macro is going to be related to what you put under it. So underneath these two things, I'm going to put pub struct, right? This is how you create a struct, a public structure, and it's going to be called the same name as this. So now it'll exist. Initialize. All right. And another thing you want to put here is apostrophe info, right? I ask developers, Anchor developers, what this means. And from what they tell me, it's very Rust specific. It's called a lifetime variable. With Rust, it's not like JavaScript. If I were to create a array in memory, right? Let's make this text. Let array equals 1, 2, 3, right? If I were to make that state of code, this array will live on forever until I do something with it. With Rust, you need to let the memory know when does this array exist. Otherwise, it's just gonna just take up space. And if there's a lot of data, it can make performance a lot worse. With Rust, but since it's a lower level language, you can put a lifetime variable with the struct and it will exist as long as it needs to. That's all you need to know. That's the basis. You don't have to go into the technicality of it. Just know that info is important for this. Okay? Hope I didn't lose you with that. There's initialize user. That's done. Cool. So within these two curly brackets is the scope of the struct. Let's define what the hell this structure is. We're going to put another macro here. We're going to call it account mute, right? Anytime you see mute, this means mutable and that it can change. So what can change here? It's going to be the authority, right? Who has the authority to initialize the user? And if you ask me, right, this should be a colon. The authority is going to be whatever wallet is connected. That guy is in charge of the user profile or that user account. Okay. So the type that we're expecting for the authority is going to be signer and then the lifetime variable info again. Okay. And then you're going to put a comma. Awesome. So let's break down what we have so far. Where the hell does signer come from, Lance? You're probably like, I'm so lost, Lance. I'm overwhelmed. Don't worry about it. Let's break it down. Signer doesn't exist, but do I have to make that? I'll let you know, you don't have to make it, right? Where is signer coming from? It's actually coming from Anchor Lang, right? We got prelude, but you could also get signer from here, right? It's built in. So that's why the libraries and the macros makes it easier. We can just say signer here. Signer just represents who's approving these transactions. Who's approving initialize user? The signer is, okay? Cool. Now we need to be able to generate what the user profile is. So to do that, we need to define this right here. Hashtag brackets account and parentheses, right? Similar to this, but we're not going to put mute here. There's actually some things that we need to initialize, right? You're going to see this with a lot of different structs. So you're going to see init almost every single time. You're going to see seeds, and this is going to equal an array, right? So let's just break down what seeds is. There's a whole algorithm to generate a unique seed. The easiest way for me to visualize this is simple. To visualize this, what I like to do is, do you guys remember Dice Bear? We might have used this in an earlier video to generate a random profile picture, right? So let's say I type the letter L. This is my input for the seed, and that will generate a random picture based on what I inputted here. So if I put the word Lance, that's the picture that Lance comes up with, right? If I put Lance123, that's the profile picture that I create. With seeds, here, we want to generate a unique you want to take put the seeds in here, and it will generate a random string of like random letters and numbers based on what you put here. Okay. So what we want to put for the seeds is user tag, right? So now we're using that constant from here, right? And we can use it because of use crate and use super, right? So we got user tag in there. Another thing that we're going to use to generate a unique, I'll call profile picture or string, is going to be the authority. So what it'll generate from these seeds is it's going to take a user tag, it's going to take the authority, right? But we can't just write authority. We just have to write authority.key built-in method dot as ref. Boom. Okay. All you need to know is that this will generate a new thing. So you can look at this. It's like me writing user state, right? And you're wondering why I'm using user state. If you look at constant here, user tag holds user state. That's string. And it's going to come into play later for testing. Then you want to put in the authority key, and that's going to be like a random set of letters and numbers, right? It's going to be your public key. So let's just say it's 1, 2, 3. And this would be the unique string that it generates for the user profile. Okay, this is what it's going to create. If you understand that, we can keep going. So after you put what you're going to put as the seeds, put a comma, and then put this magic word called bump. The cool thing about bump is that it's going to generate the user profile in this case, or user account. And based on that, it's going to check, does this account exist? Does this profile picture exist? If it does exist already, bump will bump it up one. Be like, does this one exist? What if it does? Let's say it does. All right. Okay. 1, 2, 4 exists. What about 1, 2? That exists. Let's say 1, 2, 6. If that doesn't exist, that's what it's going to use. So that's what bump is for. So you don't have any duplicates. Okay. You can also code up your own bump, by the way. If you don't code up your own bump, then it's going to do it. There's like a default bump here. Okay, cool. And next we can set specific attributes. We can say that the payer of this, who's going to pay for this, is the authority, right? Is the authority. And another thing that's very Rust specific is that you need to tell your code how much space does this take up. With JavaScript, I can put any size array, any size data, right? With Rust, you have to say how much space is this going to cost so that Rust knows exactly what's going on when you have errors. So Rust is a lot better for error handling. Let's put space, and it's going to be 8 plus std, right? Mem size underscore of colon, and then don't get lost or scared by this. It's basically just getting the size of, right, the user profile. Hey, where does user profile come from, guys? The user profile is coming from the states. So however big user profile is, wait, where am I? However big user profile is, that's the space it takes. 8 plus the size of whatever user profile is. Okay? So that was all set up. The next thing we're gonna need is pub user profile, right? All that information, it's related to whatever is underneath it. So the user profile that you get is gonna be stored in something called a box, right? It's just a place to store memory, store a place in memory that Rust can point to. And what you need to worry about is that it's going to be an account, the lifetime variable of info, and the user profile struct. Okay, I know that was a mouthful. This is a lot, but basically there's a box in memory that holds an account, and in that account holds our user profile. That's what this is expecting. That's the type it's expecting. I didn't say equals. Keep in mind, it didn't say equals. I said that's what to expect from this user profile. So if I get anything other than this, that's going to generate an error, but it won't. So other than that, let's put some space here and then say pub system underscore program. And that's simple. You're just going to use this program struct, again, given to us. You don't have to create it, and it's going to take in this system. Cool. This one is not as important, but it's needed. So system program is program info system. And there we go. That's the struct for initialize user. It's all done, right? Our goal now is to use that information, right, of this struct and add this logic to it. So our initialize user is related to our user profile. So if I say it's something like CTX, if I were to print this, I would get this struct. So let's do something with it. So the first thing I want to do, right, is say CTX, right, dot accounts, right? This is how we get it. CTX is the initialize user. Dot accounts is what, guys? What do you think accounts is? Right, you see that there's accounts right here. So if I wanted the authority, how would I get the authority? We could say dot authority. All right, and if I wanted the key, like the number specifically, you can say dot key, and there you go. All right, so that's an example of how to use stuff within the struct. Right, we can use this for later. All right, so the first thing I'll do in this function is let user profile. Okay, this is not new. We're creating a variable, right? Not bad. And I'm setting this variable equal to and mute. All right, this is new. All right, and mute is letting Rust know that this variable can change. If you don't put and mute here and you try to change it later, Rust will panic, it's called, and he'll be like, hey, what you doing with that variable? Right, we don't want that. We're like, yo, I'm gonna let you know that and mute, this can change, right? So if this can change, we wanna set this variable user profile to the user profile. So how do we get the user profile? We can get it from our context. We can get it from the struct. To get inside, like another layer inside of it, we can do dot accounts, right? And then we can do dot, let's take a look, user profile, right? Because it's going to generate a user profile for us. So the user profile is getting stored in that variable. I hope you're following along, guys. So there we go. Make a variable called user profile, get me the user profile, right, and store it in there. Powerful thing about this, and now it's easier to read, right? If I say user profile dot to do count, right? Where have you seen this before? Getting user profile dot to do count. I'm getting it. I have access now. That's the keyword to this, right? So if we're initializing the to do count, what should it be? What should this be equal to? 0. Is it clicking now? Right, let's say every time you initialize 0, you want the to-do count to start at 5. How would we do that? You'd say equals 5, right? But that doesn't make sense with our app. They should all start with 0. There you go. And we just got to do this for the rest of the data. So if we look, we should initialize the last to-do, and we should also initialize who the authority is. So let's do that. I'm going to scroll down. So, right, if I go here, we can just put it all together. We can say user profile, right? That's the variable name. And how do I get the last to do? Last underscore to do. You guys are getting it. All right, and what should this be? It should be defaulted to 0. Let's put our semicolons. And then there's one more at the top was user profile dot authority. What's the authority of this user profile account? And you actually know the answer to this one. I showed it. I gave you a preview. So I'm gonna give you guys 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. If you got the answer, you're a freaking pro. All you have to do is say context, right? Dot accounts, and then dot authority. So you can say dot authority, and if you want the actual key, you can say dot key. Wham bam, there we go. So now we successfully initialized the user profile with default data, and it's reusable to any account. Right, that's the power. And then afterwards, we need some sort of like return, and you can use something called OK. It's going to return either if this all works or not. So if it's all good, this logic is all sound, right? You can just say okay here. One small thing is like if you wanted to return like 5 or 10 from this function, you can just put that here and that's what you get back. But we're not really necessarily returning anything. We just need to initialize these values. You with me so far? Awesome. But guess what, guys? That's it. That's our first function, right? That's the initialize user, and that's the struct. We should be able to test it now. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, to get started with testing, there's a couple of things we need to do. Like you saw, we don't have a new program ID, and we haven't even built or deployed this contract to even test it. So if you see program is not built, one of the first things you have to do is see this not connected. If it says not connected, click on it and make sure you have a Playground wallet. There's a Playground wallet that lives in Solana Playground that you can use. You can't do anything locally, but it's good to save it. So let's hit save just in case, but you can also hit continue. I'm not going to do anything with that key pair, but you can see connected to Playground wallet. And this is the website's wallet address that I'm connected to. That's my wallet address right now. It's not Phantom. It's the built-in Solana Playground. All right. So now that we're connected, I have 2 Solana, right? If I want to get more, the cool thing is I can do Solana airdrop 2. It's going to request some Solana. And there you go. Now I have 4 Solana, as you can see right there. So that's awesome. It's all built in. And another thing you want to make sure is that you're in Devnet, right? Because that's the network we're working on. And then from there, go to here, and let's go to extra, program credentials. And let's say you want to make a new ID or new program, and you already have an existing one. You just have to click new, and it's going to generate a new program ID for you. All right, it's right here. Okay. You need to have the authority. Yep. So let's go ahead. We can copy it here, or you don't have to. It's going to put it automatically. So that's our new address. And what we need to do now is let's hit build. And when we hit build, this is where all the errors are going to come up. And if there's no errors, it's going to say build successful. I wouldn't be surprised if there's any errors, mostly because I often forget the semicolons. That's me being a JavaScript noob. So there we go. So method not found in Initialize User. Let's go ahead and try to troubleshoot this. Okay, a couple different things. Unused imports. Boop, boop, boop. Oh, I see. Unresolved import crate. Got it. All right, so we got a couple errors. And again, that's usually if because I missed a semicolon or spelled something wrong. So let me just double check my code. Oh yeah, so it told me that I need to add another semicolon here. And I'm getting a lot of errors, and that's because, oh yeah, so you add a colon here. If you copied everything like I did, I was missing a colon here. It's colon. And I got a lot of errors because there's a semicolon missing. Aha, so there's a semicolon here. It said error. Let's go ahead and hit build. Let's see if it's successful now. Hey, look at that. Build successful, right? There's only one warning, and that's because it's saying, hey, you imported this error, but you're not using it. And that makes sense because I haven't got to the error handling yet. But that's just a warning, so we can just deploy this as is, right? And we have our new program ID. Let's go ahead and hit deploy. Let's see if we can deploy it. Awesome. So it just told us we're poor because the deployment costs 4.86 and I only have 4 Solana. So if you remember, you can use this CLI right here and say Solana airdrop 2. And this is how we can give our Playground wallet some Solana, right? When it comes to our Phantom wallet, I'll show you a different way how to do that later. Okay, cool. So it's using our Solana Playground. I have 6 Sol now. Now let's hit deploy and let's watch the magic happen. Yep, so this could take a couple minutes depending on the size and the network at the moment. And I'll check back when it's done. Alrighty, so it's almost done now. And let's give it a second. Bam, deployment successful. As you can see, it took my Solana and it refunded it. It was saw 2 and then it became 4. Cool. The cool thing about Solana and the difference between this and Solidity is that usually with Solidity, when you deploy a smart contract, you can't change it anymore. You can't change what it does. With Solana, you have an ability to upgrade it, right? So that's like redeploying it with changes. So we're going to do upgrading later. For now, we're just going to test the initialize user. So how do we do test with Solana, right? It's good to test, the functions that you create so you know if it works. So if you go and test, now we can talk, right? Because you can see the instructions is initialize a user, and the accounts that this can create is a user profile, yeah, and a to-do account, right? And we know what these are, right? So if the test is what helps me understand the code. So if you're watching this right now and you're like, Lance, I am so lost, the test is what can really help you understand what the hell is going on. So if you do fetch all user profiles or user accounts that are created from this contract, let's fetch them. Should there be any? Let's find out. Let's do fetch all, and look at that. There are no users that were created with this contract. Okay, but what about to-dos? Are there any to-dos that live on this contract just yet? You tell me. All right, let's see if you're correct. Bam, there's no to-do. So if I want to create a user profile, like you saw there was none, how do we get them? That's where this function comes in. We got to initialize a user. So let's go ahead and test it. All right, so we're going to go ahead and test initialize a user. We know what it does because we made it together. And it's going to take in an authority, right? So what is an authority? The authority is whoever the address, the wallet address, whoever is logged in. So we can put my address, right? If you're talking about Phantom, it would be this address is the authority that's initializing, right? And for the user profile, where does this user profile? That's where this whole section is. We generate a unique user profile based on these seeds, right? The user tag seed and the authority key, right? Remember, we're going to generate a unique profile, or in this case, a unique user profile, okay? So we can X that out now that you know what it means. And we want to do from seed. So seed one is what? It's user tag, but that's a variable. What is user tag? All right, what's the type? Is it a string, a number? Let's check our constant. It is a string. And we don't want to write user tag. We want to write user state. So that's why I wrote it on dice bear. We want the string user state here. And then we want to add another seed, right? Because it takes two. It takes in the authority key. So this add seed. What do you think is the type of the second seed? Is our authority a string, number, bytes, right? It's going to be pub key. And for pub key, I'm going to copy authority right here because it's going to be the same and paste it. So there we have our program ID. That's the next thing it takes in, but it's not part of the seeds. Then we hit generate and there you go. It generated a unique public key for our user profile. This is the address of our user profile on the blockchain. And we can reference it later. All right, so now all I have to do is hit test and hopefully it passes if we did everything right. So let's test if our function works. Let's go. It says initialize user passed, right? So what does that mean? What does that mean for us, guys? It means we successfully create a user profile. Where's the proof, Lance? I don't understand. Let's go to user profile and now let's fetch all the accounts that we created with the contract. There we go. Do you see it, guys? We have one entry, one user. This is his public key. All right, that's his, and this is the account. This is his authority, and the last to do, and his to do count is 0. We successfully initialized a user. So if you understood at least half of that, or this helped you, all right, we're gonna rinse and repeat this process for the next 2 functions. So I hope you're ready. Let's get started. All right, so with that out of the way, let's get on to the next function. All right, so with initialize user, not only did we initialize the user, but we also added a user account to our contract, right? So for fetch all, again, we have one user. The next thing we want to do is how do we add a to-do item, right? So the next function, we're going to write it down here. We're going to say pub fn add underscore to do, right? So there we go. Cool. So we add function, we take parentheses, that's the function name. And again, this function, what is it supposed to do? It's supposed to add a to-do count to our smart contract, or to the blockchain rather. Okay, so what we should happen after we run this test, we should see one to-do item for every single to-do. Okay, cool. So let's get started building the skeleton of this function. As you know, I'm gonna hit enter here and say context. All right, it's gonna take in context, right? And context is gonna be what, right? So based on this last one, should this be blank? No, there should be a struct associated with it, right? And it's gonna be add to do. That's the context of this, right? Next is going to be a comma, right? It's gonna take in another one. And we're gonna say underscore content, right, is going to be a what? What's the type of content, right? If you're not sure, if you remember our states here, content is what type? String, right? So when we add it to do, we should also be able to input a string, right? I want to say, yeah, there you go. So it's going to take into context, and it's also going to be like, hey, what is the actual to do you want to add, right? So if it's learn Solana, this is where it'll go underneath content. Cool. After that, we can add the arrow, and then we can say our result again, right? Do you see how there's a lot of like boilerplate code? So that's why I don't want to focus too much on the little stuff. All right, you'll understand them as we keep testing and practicing together. Okay, so there was a result, And what do we want to do here? All right, we want to fill the to do struct with the proper values, right? So what does that mean, right? So if we go to do account, what should be content? Content should be whatever we passed in as the string, right? We should figure out the index, right? So we need a way to keep track of the index, right? Index is 0, index is 1. And we also need to initialize if it's completed or not, right? So what should be the default Boolean for marked, right? If you said false, you got it, right? Because if the default was true, we'd only have completed ones at the start, right? If you want to only see uncompleted ones, you want to initialize them as false, right? So that's the pseudocode of the function. You with me? So we want to fill the to do struct with the proper values, and I will say to do account, right, with the proper values. Okay, so this is the skeleton of the app. The next thing we did was we created the struct so we can understand what we can play with. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down. We're going to create the add to do struct. So we're going to do kind of something similar. We're going to make that macro. We're going to say derive. Let's get accounts into here. And we also want to get instruction, right? Instruction. Okay, and underneath this is important. So we'll say pub struct. And what's the name of this struct, right? It's going to be add to do. So we're going to call this one add to do, right? That's why I was very slow with this struct, because it's essentially the same thing, just whatever's relevant to do account now instead of user profile. Okay, so this is add to do. Let's make the scope of it, which is right here. And we can do another account, right? This time, right, we're gonna have a couple different things, right? So, okay, initialize it automatically, but we wanna play enter. And we wanna make this mutable, because it could be a different user profile that's controlling this add to do, right? We wanna give it some seeds, right? Remember this? And the seeds, all this stuff is for the user profile associated with this to do, which is gonna be the same as before. So it's gonna be add user tag into here, and the authority dot key. Remember, this one needs a dot as ref as well with parentheses. Okay, so far this is similar to this right now, right? And then we want to add our bump, and then we want a has one equals authority. Okay, awesome. There we go. And underneath this, right, we did all of this just to say that's related to the user profile, which again expects a type of a box that holds an account that holds what? What does this guy hold? It holds a user profile. Okay, cool. All right, so now we have the user profile associated with the to-do. Next thing we're gonna need is the actual to-do account itself, right? So where this one generated a user profile, we want to generate a to-do account, right? So to generate that one, we're going to take an account again, parentheses. This is going to be similar. We want all of these, the init and stuff like that. So I hit enter. Why does it look like this? Should be a different color. Strange, but we'll figure it out later. Let's do just hashtag account. Oh, I see. It's because we never closed this properly. There you go. That looks better. Cool. So thank God for color coding. We're going to do this. We're going to hit enter. This one's going to have init because we want to initialize it. Seeds equal to, and this time it's different. All right. We're not going to put user tag here. We're going to look at constants. We want the to-do tag, and to-do tag, when we test it, we're going to write to-do state instead. Okay? So let's go down. Inside these seeds, we want to-do tag, which holds the string. Right? We want the authority dot key. Hold on. The authority dot key parentheses, and remember there's that dot as underscore ref that we need. And then there's one more thing we need. We're also going to need and right here, the user profile, right? This is why we had to set it up earlier. Dot last to do, right? What was the last index of that user, right? Last to do index of that user, right? And then we want to store that as a U8, an integer, and dot as underscore ref, right? So all this information just to generate the next to do account, right? So don't forget to put and user underscore profile dot last to do as U8 as ref, and at the very end there's the squeeze in this little comma here. It's easy to miss. Hit enter. Cool. All right, so I'm gonna look to you guys. What do we usually put after seeds? You got it, John. It's gonna be bump, and I hope all the Johns that watch this are like, huh? All right, so there's a bump in here, and another unique thing is we're gonna put payer is equal to authority, right? There's specific, like, I don't want to call it traits, but specific things that you want to put in here that specify what it is. So it has one, right, is equal to authority, right? The payer is going to be the authority, right? There's different special cases here. They all do different things. I don't want to focus too much on what they do, but it adds specific properties, essentially, right? So remember, we have to define the space on this one. How much space does to do account take? Well, to get the size of something, we need to do all of this stuff. This is how you can easily get the size of something with Rust and Anchor. So you can say whatever the size of to do account is, and then call it. And then we also need the +8. I forgot that. Right, it's the same thing as last time, except I put the +8 first. Doesn't really matter. It still adds up to the same thing. So that's the space, and all of this right underneath that should put the to do account. So we can reference it later. And just like before, it's going to be in a box, right? It's going to take in info, that's how long it lives for, and account holds the to do account. Beautiful. Awesome. Now let me just look up here to reference what else do I need. I need I need the authority. Yeah, the authority, and I also need the system program. So let's add those next. And again, the order doesn't necessarily matter here. What matters is if you put these on top of it. So this, we do need the mute one, and then we can put pub authority is just like before. Just look up for reference, signer info. There we go. Cool. So that's the authority setup. Let's also set up the system program, and that simply is just going to be program info, and voila, system, boom. Okay, I think that's it for the add to do struct. Now we're gonna use all this information here to make the logic of our function, and our function is to fill a to do account with the proper values, kind of like initialize user, right? So we gotta essentially create and fill up the to do account with values, right? So we'll put in what the authority is for this to do item, fill in the index, fill in what's the string, and initialize this to false. Okay, you still, that was me checking if you're still with me. All right, cool. So we're gonna add it to do here, and here we go. So it's essentially the same thing. Let's write it out. So first, just like before, we want to get a variable that holds the to do account and the user profile. Right, so let's say let to do underscore account, that's our variable, is equal to, right? And how do we get the to do account? Right, that's our context. You remember, it's going to be CTX, right? And the cool part is, can the to do account be unique, and can it change? Yeah. Right, we can have multiple to do accounts, so you want to make sure you add and mute, or else we're going to run into some errors. So I'll just say context.accounts, right? And then how do we get to do account? Scroll. You can just say dot to do account. Dot to do underscore account. And there we go. So we got that. We also need access to user profile. So just like before, we can store that in a variable. So let's do that. Say let user underscore profile, all right, is equal to and mute, because it's mutable. Let's get it from our context, right? How come I can get user profile from add to do? That's weird, right? I thought I'd have to get, initialize user. Well, if you look at add to do, we set up user profile too, right? We didn't initialize it, right? There's no init here, right? We're just getting it, right? Getting that user profile. We're referencing it. So all we have to do is say user profile context accounts, and then we labeled it the same way, user profile, right? So that's a cool way to get user profile without, referencing this struct. Okay. And now, now that we have we'll just put this comment and put it here. We can say initialize variables, right? So now we can take these variables, right, and do stuff with it, right? So if I were to print out to do account, I would see an object with all these things, but do these have any values? No, so we can give it values. All right, so let's start with the easy one. You guys should be able to do this. To do account dot content, right? What should that equal? All right, it should equal whatever you want the to do item. So if I put a string here that says learn Solana, right? Every time I add a to do, what to do items would I have, right? Every single time I add a to do, I'll have learn Solana, right? So if you want a visual representation of what this does, if I ran this function and tested it, I would have a to do item with learn Solana. It's not text, with learn Solana, right? If I ran that code again, would I get a unique one? Yes or no? No, I would get another one that's learn Solana. If I did this again, learn Solana. They're all the same. I don't want them to be the same. How do I make them different, right? We want to make this dynamic. So instead of learn Solana, we should write underscore content. And where am I getting underscore content, Lance? I'm getting it as an argument from our function. All right, if this is looking scary to you, all right, we can look at it like this. All right, how many parameters does this function take? All right, it's taking, just 2 parameters, context and content, and we're using that content here. Right, that's not too bad, yeah? So if the content is that, let's initialize the rest of the things here. Okay, I'm gonna put it the order that we listed so it looks nice. So the first thing is the authority. So let's do to do, right? Account. How do I get the authority? Now you're catching on. It's dot authority. What should we put as the authority? We can say context dot accounts, right? Just like before. Dot authority dot key. Authority dot key. Okay, and don't forget the semicolons. I always forget those. Bam. Okay, after we got the authority, the next thing we want is to do account. We want the index, right? The index is equal to, right, the user profile dot last to do, right? So I'm making use of something here, right? I'm using the user profile dot last to do, right? Last to do is something, again, it comes from the user profile. And it's interesting because I'm not using to do count, right? The reason why I'm using last to do, because I want to store the latest number, because when it comes to count, that's going to change, right? The count is going to change. So this is for the account. One is just saying the number that it is. Okay? So all you need to know is that it's helpful if you do it this way. You don't have to, but you can. Okay, so then content is next. We did that. And now we want the to do underscore account dot marked. And remember I said, what did we want? Did we want a dynamic value or do we want a static value for this? So if you said static, ding, 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 you got it. It's going to be false, right? Because every to do I create is going to be dynamic, but will always be incomplete until I mark it as completed, right? So it's a lot of like being able to visualize the logic within your app. Okay. So we're not done quite yet, right? We want to be able to increase to do index for the PDA. And remember, PDA is the account, the profile derived account, right? So we want to say that user, right? Let's say if there's 2 accounts, there's the Lance account, there's a Kazi account, right? If I'm on Lance and I add a to do, should Kazi's profile be incremented? Should his to do count increase? No, only Lance's should. So to increase the to do IDX for the PDA, we can say user profile underscore last to do is equal to, right, the user underscore profile dot last to do, but we're not done, right? We want to do a dot here, right? Dot checked underscore add 1 and dot, right, we can hit enter, unwrap. All right, looks scary, but all it's doing is check if I can increment the to-do, right? Because remember, it's only up to U8, right, which means unsigned integer 8, right? So check if I can increment it, and if it's true, we're gonna increment by 1. And then unwrap is essentially just unwrapping it. You don't need to understand that just yet. Just know that it's helpful to add right here. Okay, so this is how you can increment really easily with Rust. I'm saying that the user profile to do is going to be whatever it is plus 1, if I can do it. Yeah, cool. We want to do the same thing, right, to increase the total to do count, right? Cool. So we can say user underscore profile dot to do underscore count is equal to user underscore profile dot to do underscore count. Right, so I updated the last to do. Let's also update the to do count. Right, there's two things keeping track of the number. I use them for different things. All right, so we're gonna say dot checked add 1, same thing. Oh, and also don't put a semicolon here because you're gonna end out the whole line. This dot unwrap is chained onto this. So essentially you can do it like this. But since there's no semicolon, right, this will work the same. So you can say dot unwrap again, make that blank, and you want to make sure you close it here, don't close it here. Okay, so we increase the index, right? And we also increase the total count, right? So this last to do is for the index, to increment the index. This is just saying how many it is, right? Because the index can be different from the total amount, right? You can have 7 to-dos, but the last index could be 6, depending on what we delete, right? I could delete this one and mark this one, and we'd have random indexes. Okay, you following? Cool, so what's the last thing I'll need? It's gonna be the okay, right? And I don't wanna necessarily return anything. And there you go, that's add to do. I don't think I need anything else. Let's see, is this string and here? Perfect. Okay, now a moment of truth, guys. Let's go ahead and build to see if we get any errors. And we might, you know me. There we go. We have one error, instruction in this scope. Okay. Let's see. It might be a spelling error this time, actually, based on that. So we have instruction and instruct-citon, right? There you go. So maybe if I fix that, that would help. Let's hit build again. Hey, build successful. So if you look over here in our test, you'll see add to do, right? But you'll see that it's not deployed just yet, right? We didn't upgrade. And if we upgrade, we're gonna get some more Solana. Right, but I believe we can still test this. So let's go ahead and test that. All right, so let's go ahead and upgrade our contract because we did make some upgrades. We added to do struct and we added a add to do function. So if we hit upgrade, you might not be able to afford it. It might cost more than that's a bigger size file. As you can see, deploying. Okay, looks like it's going through, so I'm gonna let it upgrade. Okay, looks like it's almost done. Okay, deployment successful, and we got refunded some Solana. That's awesome. Cool, so now this is live on the blockchain. Every time you upgrade and deploy your smart contract, it's living on the blockchain, and it's just waiting for us to call upon it and use any of the functions. So let's go over to tests, and let's go ahead and try to add a to-do, right? And if you notice, there's 3 accounts this time. User profile, the to-do account, and authority, right? There's three things now for this function. And let's see, what else? No, that's pretty much it. So all we have to do to test it is just fill in all these things. So let's say the to-do item is test add to-do, right? For accounts, how do we get a user profile? Okay, so we got the content. The next thing we have to do is the user profile, to-do account, and authority. So this is the tricky part about testing. For user profile, when I make it, do I need to generate a brand new user profile? Yes or no? You tell me. Okay? If you said no, you're correct. I don't want to generate a new user profile. So then if I don't generate a new one, what should I put here? Should I put my wallet address? Not necessarily. What you want to put for user profile is any user that you have, right? So let's check user profile. Let's check fetch all, and there you go. So for user profile, we can use this public key. All right, you might be asking, why do I know it's not my address, by the way? Because this is the wallet address, if you remember, of the playground. I know because if I were to paste that here, my address, and click fetch, you're gonna see given account is not a user profile. So that doesn't go there. If I do fetch all, right, this was my address. What we're gonna need is this public key. This is the user profile. How do I know? If I were to erase this, paste it here, and just fetch that, only that, I'll get just that object. So that's the correct user profile, right? So this is essentially, right, the initialized user. So if I'm already initialized and I'm the Lance, this is Lance using Lance to create a to-do, right? If it was like this, whatever, this is somebody else creating a to-do, right? So you want to put that user profile, okay? Cool. So for to-do account, this one, do I need to generate it or is it already given to me? The answer is we need to generate it because it's just like before. There's a couple different seeds that we need to add. So how many seeds do we need to add? 1, 2, 3. All right, this was a number. We had to add a number as a ref. Okay, so for the to account, let's do from seed. The first one is a string. All right, so remember before when we went to, which one was it? I think it was constant. We did user state because that's the string that lives inside user tag. What we need now is to do state. Let's get to do state up in here. To do underscore state, that's the string. All right, we need to add another seed. And the next one we need to add is, where is he? Right here, the authority. So remember which type was authority? It was pub key. And now, what's the authority of this, right? If you don't know, if you don't remember what authority we're using, let's take this and let's go to fetch, right? We fetched it. The authority of this specific user profile is this AZ thing, which is actually your wallet address anyway. So you could copy it, or you could just put your wallet address in there, right? Boom. All right, that's in there. We need to add one more seed, right? And that's gonna be what? This user profile last to do. Like what was the number of their last to do? That's why it's important to update it. And if you remember, does Lance have any to-dos after we initialized it? That's the steps? No. So let's add one more seed. This is a number and we're gonna put 0. So if I set everything correctly, we can hit generate, right? So there's a to-do account, and the last but not least is the authority. So the authority, right, is going to be essentially the same thing as my address. All right, we can check that right here. Authority is that, and if this works, this should pass. So let's hit test. Hey, let's go. I'm so excited. I love seeing tests pass. I also like seeing tests fail because then you can like understand it a little bit better. But if yours passed, should we have a to-do account? Let's find out. Let's do fetch all. This was blank before. Give it a couple seconds. Oh, it's an error. Look at that, guys. We have successfully one to-do account, right? One to-do item. What's the content of this to-do? It's test add to-do. Is it completed, guys? It's not completed. And there you go. Us doing this fetch all is how we fetch all of them in here. Every time we connect our user and we initialize it, we'll always fetch the to-dos automatically. That's why in our Solana Playground, we don't need a fetch to-do function. That's the awesome part about this. It's done in a super smart way. So there we go. We just tested the test. We just tested the add to-do. It works. We have one to-do with an index of 0. Amazing. Okay, so now that add to-do is working, we only have 2 more functions left to go, guys. You guys are doing so good so far. All right, so the next thing let's work on, let's go back here. Let's make this smaller again. The next thing you want to work on is marking the to-do, right? So if we go here underneath this function, perfect. We want to create the mark to do function. So how do we mark it to do? All we have to do to get started is type in pub fn mark to do. So let's write pub fn for function mark underscore to do. This is just the name, and it's going to take in what, right? I think you guys know the answer. It's going to take in context. What is context, right? Is this going to matter, right? The context that we're taking in is a struct mark to do. Does the struct exist yet? Not yet. It will, right? What else does it take in? It's going to take in the to do index, right? This is not referencing the struct of the to do account. This is just a parameter that's labeled to do index. All right, what's the type that we're expecting, guys? Let's see if you know this one. All right, if you said you ate, you're a freaking genius. So this mark to do takes two things, the context and the index. Okay, it's good to know. Next thing, result. This thing, parentheses, bam. And then curly brackets. This is the skeleton of the function. Okay, the next thing we got to do though is, before we write any logic, is let's figure out what this struct is. Okay, so we want to create a mark to do struct. So it's going to go all the way down here. And I'm going to move a little bit faster, guys, because at this point you guys should be recognizing the pattern. So to start off, we're going to derive what? We're going to derive accounts. All right, what else are we going to do? We're going to get the instruction. All right, what's our instruction going to take in? Going to take in to do IDX. What's the type of it? U8. Okay, what needs to go under here? The struct. What's the name of our struct? Mark to do. How long does our struct live? Info. All right, that's the lifetime. Okay, there we go. These curly brackets represents what is this struct made out of. Awesome. So what we need to do here is we want to get that user reference to user profile again. All right, so if you remember, how did we get a reference to user profile from add to do? It's going to be literally the same thing, I think. You can literally copy paste this, but I'll just write it out. Okay, so let's do account parentheses. There's like the suggestion there. We don't need it. We can say mute because it could be mutable. All right, we can say seeds. All right, what are the seeds for user profile? You guys know? User tag, right? And what else? Authority. Cool. Awesome. And that's it. Don't forget the comma here. After seeds, what do we usually write here? We have bump. Okay. And then another thing that's important, the unique thing here is that has one. There should only be one authority that can work with this user profile, and you can set it to authority. Okay, cool. Who is gaining, like where is this all for? I mean, it's going to be for pub user profile. All right, and there you go. And what is the type that it's expecting? It's going to be in a box. It's going to hold an account. That box is holding an account, and that account has info. And inside that account is user profile. Boom, boom. Okay, cool. Yep, it's exactly the same as before. Okay, so we have user profile. The next thing we want is actually just a reference to the to-do account as well, right? Because for the struct, we need to know who is the user profile associated and what is the to-do account that we want to mark, right? To get a reference to that, we're going to do an account here, right? And it's going to be similar. I don't want that default one. It's going to be mute seeds equal to. So do we use user tag? Nope. We'll use to do tag. And this is the same though. It's going to take in an authority dot key dot as underscore ref, right? Parentheses. It's also going to take the to do index. To do index, right? And then we need a dot as ref because that's going to be how it can read it. Boom. So that's all the seeds that we're going to need for that, comma. All right, what do we need here? Bump. Okay. And again, for this to do account, it should only be one authority. So has one, and the target of this has one is going to be authority. Okay. And again, authority doesn't really exist just yet. We're going to make it in a second. Cool. All of this is associated with this to do account, which again which is expecting a type, which is a box that's holding an account that is info, and specifically that account is the to do account. Okay. And now we can do the default stuff, which I could copy paste again. If you want to, guys, I'll just write it out so you can catch up. Account mute, because it can change. Authority is the signer, which comes from anchor lang, remember, right? And we also have the pub system program. All right, cool. So I'm just typing it all out. Info, comma, system, just like before, and comma. I don't think I need to put a comma here as well. All right, so let me just double check that this is the same. Yes, sir. Okay, cool. And there we go. That is the mark to do struct, right? We have a reference, we have user profile, we have a to do account, the authority, the system program, all within the struct. So now, time for the fun part, using that in here. So this is one of our simpler functions, right? Because what's the goal of mark to do? Right? We want to change marked to true, right? Or in other words, mark to do as completed. Yeah, is that making sense? Okay, so usually what I like to do is like to make a variable that holds a reference to it and say that is equal to and mute tx, right? That's the context, right? How do I get into the actual to do account? You can do a dot accounts dot to do account, and we can do that because that's within the struct, right? To do accounts in there. Okay, semicolon, and let's see. Oh. Remember our errors? We finally can use our error, right? Our error.rs. We want to use already marked, right? Cool. So we can say require bang, right? If the to do count dot marked, right, is already marked, we can say to do error, and from to do error, which error do we want? Let's see our error. We want already marked, right? So I'm saying from the to do error object, get me already marked, right? So it's gonna run, it's gonna check that, and if that's true, then it's gonna say it's already marked. Okay. Here we can just mark the to do, which should be pretty simple. Mark to do. How do I get the marked key, right? How do I get marked? Pretty simple. We can say to do account, right? Because we have a variable dot marked. And what should this be? It should always be true, right? Because we can only mark them as completed. We can't mark it to do as uncompleted. If you wanted to mark it as, like you want to be able to toggle, then you can do something like this, to do account.marked, right? This is a not, which makes it the opposite, right? And I'm telling you these things because the whole point of this video is to show you how it works, right? You don't need to know all the complicated algorithms and deserialization that happens with Anchor, right? What you should know though is what you need to change to get your result, right? If you don't want an index, what should you put instead, right? If you want to make it so that you can toggle and to do instead of mark to do, right? You can do this, right? For me, I want to make it simple. Let's just say when I mark it to do, we're just going to switch it to true. Okay, and when we're done, what do we put here? Okay, okie dokie. Guess what, guys? That's it. That's mark to do, right? Pretty simple. All we have to do now is let's test if it works. So one of the first tests I do is let's run build. All right, build. Here we got an error. See, to do account marked true. Oh, okay, so it's unexpected token. I see. It's telling me that in mark to do, this should have a semicolon, essentially. And now let's see if that fixes it. Build successful. All right, so our build is successful. One thing we want to do is also upgrade our contract, right, and deploy it so that it lives on the blockchain. Right? You don't have to do this, but whenever we want to make a change, you added a change to your smart contract and you want to redeploy it, click upgrade. Cool. So we'll wait for this and let's go ahead and test it. All right, so let's go ahead and test our mark to do. Deployment was successful. Let's go to test. You can see mark to do is there, and now this is the arguments. So if you remember what mark to do takes in, it takes in the index of the one you want to mark. So you need to know what to do you want to mark. And it also takes in the accounts, right? So what accounts do you need to know? It's going to be the user, the to do account, and who's the authority, right? So we have access to all of these. If you forget, you can go to do account and do a fetch all, right? So there you go. This is the authority, right? This is the to do account. And the user associated with, we can do a fetch all for the user, right? That's going to be this. This is the user profile. So let's put in some things here. For again, for the arguments, 0, right? Because we only have one to do. Pretty simple. User profile. I don't want to generate a new user profile. I already have one user, and that user profile was this pub key right here. It should be this, okay? And we can paste that in there. Cool. What's the to-do account? What's the to-do address, right? So if you remember the to-do address, if you go under to-do account, you do the fetch all. This right here is the to-do account, that was generated from last time. Right, we could put that there. And who is the authority? Who has the authority to do all this? That should be my address, because if you look under to do account, who's the authority? AZ3X. If I go to this right here, oops, if you go to authority right here, do my address AZ3X. Okay, so that's everything you need. I don't need to generate any fancy seed stuff. I already have all that information. Let's go ahead to test and mark to do as completed. And just to double check, if you look, what's the status of this to do? False currently. All right, let's hit test. Okay, it passed. Awesome. So now we can do a fetch all, and look at that, it's true. So we successfully marked the to do on the blockchain as true. Right, and another cool thing is if you know the public key or the to do account address, you can just paste it here and hit fetch, and it'll just fetch you just the to do account. All right, just the authority, just the IDX content marked. Awesome. So hope that makes sense to you. We got one more function. Let's go ahead and keep crushing it. All right, are you guys ready for the last function on the smart contract? I know I am. Let's go ahead to our lib again, put this down, and let's go. So we have mark to do. The last function is let's remove the to do or delete the to do, right? This one function is kind of special, right? It's special because the name is very misleading, right? This is going to be called remove to do, right? But what this actually does is decrement the to do count, right? That's the logic of this function, right? But how do we delete it to do, right? There's a workaround, like I said. In the blockchain, you can't really delete anything you store on there. That's the whole point. It's persistent, right? But there is ways to get around that and close the account, right? So that's what we're going to show you how to do now. So for remove to do, it takes in a context just like before, right? And you guys are familiar with the format. It's going to take in the context of a struct. Do we have a struct that we want to, use with this? Not exactly yet. It's going to be called remove to do though. And it's also going to take in an index. If I ask you guys, why is this remove to do going to take an index of U8? Why do you think? It's because we want to know which to do you want to make. If I had 5 to do's, how would you know? You got to pass in the index. Okay. So then we're just going to take in result, boom, boom, and curly brackets here. That's the skeleton of the function. And like I said, what we want to do with this logic is decrement the total to do count, right? So it's not really deleting. There's no deleting in this function itself. The closing of the account, right, is going to happen elsewhere. It's going to happen all within the struct too, which is the cool part. So let's go ahead and make the struct. So to make the struct, we'll scroll all the way to the bottom here. And what we want to do is the same old. We want to derive the accounts, right? We want to get instruction. I hope I spelled it right. And the instruction is going to take in an index again. So let's put IDX expect a U8, an unsigned integer. And the important part is what you put under here. So that's all going to be related to remove to do. And then we can say info, right? And then put these curly brackets, and anything within these curly brackets is the scope of the structure. Okay, so what do we need in this struct? We want to get accounts again, right? Or not accounts, account, parentheses, and let's set it up. So we want to get what? We want to get user profile and to do account. Again, we didn't use user profile last time, but it's good to have, reference to all of these. So we have mute here, the seeds. What seeds does user profile take in? Do you remember? All right, at this point, it should be obvious. It's user tag and authority.key.as ref. Okay, so we have seeds, and then we got to bump, right? Next available, and there's should have one authority, so we could say has one authority. Okay, cool. And then underneath, this is where we put user profile, the type. You guys should know the type by now. Okay. Info, and it's going to take user profile, and let's close it off. Awesome. So that's the user profile. We also want the to do account associated. So we have this, this, mute, and this is the key part right here, right? So remember, all this stuff has to do with the user profile, right? This specifically has to do with the to-do account itself. And the remove function, right, if I scroll back up, like I said, it's not actually deleting anything in here. The deleting or the removing is coming from, it's going to be closed within the context. And by context, I mean this struct, right? If you're with me so far, this is where we can close the to-do account, right? We opened the to-do account, we put one on there on the blockchain. There's only one right now. To close it, right, we can do that through here. So we can say close, right? It's a special property, right? Just like has one. And the close, the target, right, of this close is the authority. Who can close it? Another thing cool about closing a to-do account is that you actually get refunded your Solana. This is new. Like, that's awesome. So if you're gonna spend Solana to store stuff on the chain, right? That's how you're able to store stuff. You spend stuff. You spend a small fee, right? When you close the account, Solana will give it back to you because you're no longer using their space. Okay, so we can do seeds. Right, so now that's able to close when this context is run. Now it's able to close. We need the seeds for it. And the seeds for a to-do account is to-do tag, the authority dot key dot as underscore ref, and the to-do IDX, I believe, as ref. Okay, so it'll be and brackets to-do underscore IDX dot add underscore ref parentheses. And then don't forget that comma there. Cool. So again, after the siege, what do we usually have underneath there, guys? Bump. Okay, and again, has one. We need that right here because it shouldn't be one authority. The target of has one is authority, just like this. Cool. Awesome. All right, so now we have a closable to-do account, right? So if we do box, because it's the type it's expecting, info, comma, and this you write to do count, close, boom. Okay, last thing we'll need right here is the authority and the system program. You guys know this one now. So it's account, make it mutable, and you can say pub authority signer info. Okay, cool. Now let's get the system program one, system underscore program, say program info system. Okay, cool. Alrighty, so that is it. That's the remove to do struct, right? We're able to close the account and get some Solana back, right? We'll see that later on when we hook it up to the front end, right? So I'm excited about that. And then we can go ahead and write the logic for the remove to do function. All right, so for the remove to do function, there's no deleting, like I said. I keep saying it over and over, so you guys remember. We're really just decrementing the total to do count. So in order to do that, do we need to get the to do account or should we work with the user profile? Right, which one has the to do count? And the answer is user profile. That's the one we really need. So let's go back to the function. Let's get user profile. Usually I store it in a variable and set this equal to, and how do we get it? All right, try to pause the video and do it yourself if you understand. If not, don't worry, it's andmute.ctx for the context, right? The remove to do context. And within that context, we have a user profile. All right, so let's get that done. So accounts.user underscore profile, boom. All right, so now that we have that stored in the variable, we can edit it. All right, I don't have to put space here actually. Say user underscore profile dot, how do we get to do count? To do underscore count. You with me? So user profile dot to do count is equal to, all right, you're gonna see it's similar to before, user profile dot to do count, right? And then we can do a dot checked here. All right, remember we did dot checked add? Well, there's actually a dot check sub. There's actually multiple checks, right? That's built into Anchor, right? And then you also want to do unwrap and then semicolon here, right? And notice something. I'm only decrementing the to-do count and not the last to-do, right? Last to-do, like I said, is really just last to-do index, right? We can preserve the latest index number in last to do, and to do count is how many total to dos currently. I hope that's clear now. Okay, and I just want to put a comment here, right? No need to decrease last to do index, right? Because that doesn't make sense, right? This should, even though the count can be different from how many indexes are that existed, right? And also the to do PDA is already closed in context, right? So what's actually removing to do is, like I said, down here, this close, right? And it's a unique part of this macro. Okay, and if you want to learn more about it, search up close on Anchor Docs, and you can read about more about what it does and what other properties you can do, like has one and closed. Okay, for now, this is all you need to know. And what's the last thing I'm missing, guys? Yes, you guys know, it's okay. Cool, amazing. Guess what, guys? We're done with the smart contract, right? We just need to test if remove to do works, and then we just have to hook it up to the front end and we're done. So let's go ahead and test remove to do. So part of testing is being able to build successfully. So let's go ahead and build and see if we can run into any errors. All right, build successful. That's what you like to see. And again, you're seeing a warning to do index because in that function mark to do and remove to do, we're not actually using to do index, but it's needed when we pass it in the front end. So don't worry about those warnings. As long as you see build successful, we're good to go. And if we're okay with everything, we need to upgrade and redeploy our smart contract like before. Luckily, this might be the last time we upgrade our contract, because after this, we just need to hook it up to the front end. So I'm gonna let this deploy and I'll check in with you guys in a bit. All right, deployment successful. We go over to our test feature and we have remove to do, and remove to do takes an argument. What is the index of our to do? 0, right? Because we only have 1 at the moment with this smart contract. What is the user profile? Do I need to generate a new one? I do not. We can figure that all out here. So let's do a fetch all so we can remember. Fetch all, cool. Awesome. So the user profile that's generated, right, is gonna be this, the H6 right here. I'm gonna hit copy. Here you can hit paste right here. What's the to do account? Right, we already have a to do account that we want to delete. It's just this one to do, and that's gonna be this public key right here. And if you double click, it actually just highlights it for you. It's a cool feature on Solana Playground. And if we hit paste, there you go. The authority, if you remember, we can double check this with the address. Who has the authority with this? It's the wallet address, right, that was initialized. Okay, so for authority, we can just put my address. Okay, and I want to make sure this is testing remove to do. So let's go ahead and close this. And if you look, if I fetched all the to do's, I only have 1. If I remove this to do and close it, how much should I have? So let's go ahead and hit test. Let's go, remove to do passed. So it should close this to do account. And if I fetch all now, nothing. It's gone. We successfully removed to do. Our contract is all done. And since we deployed this and upgraded it, it lives on the blockchain. So what we need to do now is we need to go right back into VS Code, right, and hook it up with our front end. So you guys ready for the last stretch? Give yourself a pat on the back if you made it this far. I want you guys to comment Acheron, or we love Acheron. It's gonna be like this. Let me show you guys. If you guys comment this text, we love Acheron. I know you made it this far in the video. Acheron is one of the lead developers who made this wonderful tool, Solana Playground, right? And I've been talking with him constantly, and he's been helping me figure out how this works. So shout outs to the developer for that. He was a big help. So now let's get coding and connect our front end. Okay, so here we are back on VS Code, and all we need to do now is hook up our smart contract to our front end. And what you need to know is this folder right here. So let's take a look. We need to take a look at this constants folder and input all the information you need. Like again, this constant folder is given, right? But to set it up, it's pretty simple. Here, we're just importing pub key from Solana Web3, and we're exporting, right? This should look familiar. This is the address of your smart contract that you want to grab from the blockchain. So we're going to change this. And another one is this to.json. This one was given, but we want to change this to our IDL, from the smart contract. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get back our app right here, and I'll make this smaller so we can see both. And then we could do something like this. Bam. Okay, cool. So let's get the ID and let's insert that. Let's double click this, copy. And now we're gonna grab this program. Delete that, paste, there you go. So constants is good. We're using, and now I know we're using this specific program, right? Another thing that we're gonna need to do is get the IDL. So how do we get the IDL? We're gonna need to pull this back in, go into this toolbar right here, click extra and IDL, right? So you need to export this, right? You'll get this IDL.json, and if you double click it, it should open it in VS Code, and it should look like this. Right, so we can make this a little bit smaller. If you do Alt-Z and take a look at this, you don't have to understand what it is, but if you take a look, this is like essentially all the information about the program. If you're coming from Solidity, think of this as the ABI, yeah? So go ahead and Control A, right? And then we're gonna press Command B, and make sure you copy this. And in your to-do.json, well, your to-do.json, right? You wanna Control A this, delete it, and paste what you copied from that IDL. Anytime you change up your program or your smart contract, you always have to update it with the matching IDL. This is how you do it, okay? So now we can minimize this. We can go ahead and open it. Cool. And now let's see. Perfect. So we have our constants updated, and the code that we're going to be using is going to be all in this to-do.js. The majority of the logic of connecting our app to the blockchain is going to be in to-do.js. So one of the first things that we're going to do is to take a look at the imports, right? We're getting anchor, we're using a use effect, use memo, use state. This is our Solana program, right? That's from constants. Here's our RDL. It's called to do IDL. Toast helps with success messages, right? It gives us little notifications. System program, UTF-8, we're all going to be using that later. Okay, awesome. So this is our dummy to-dos. One of the first things that I want to start working on is this use effect right here. So let's go ahead and work on that. All right, so we're in our to-do.js hook, and with this use effect, we're going to set up the logic about finding the user profiles and the to-do accounts. If you remember on the Solana Playground, we were able to fetch all of those by clicking fetch all, right? Here, we're gonna use our front end to fetch them and see if a profile exists, a user profile. And if a user profile exists, then let's get all the to-do accounts associated with that profile, right? That's essentially a mouthful, but essentially let's write it in comments, fetch a user profile. If there is a profile, then get its to-do accounts, right? That's the first step of this. And if there is no user profile, then you should just have the initialize state to false, and we should be able to initialize user. So we can be able to initialize user later. Right now, we're just fetching stuff. Okay, so we can remove this static thing, right? For now, let's go ahead and start coding. So the first thing I want to do in this use effect, if you don't know what use effect is, it's a React hook that essentially when you load the page, this is the code that's going to run. What I want to run when I load up the page or my app, I'm going to run a function called find profile accounts, right? This is finding user profiles. And it's going to make it asynchronous. Cool. And essentially, we're going to say if program, right? So if program, if you're wondering what the hell is program, let's scroll up to the top and let's see. Okay, it's not the top here. It actually should be down here. Program is this, right? We're using memo to get anchor, right? And this anchor wallet is essentially just getting the program. All right, and this says anchor wallet, but this is just a wallet. Okay, it could just be wallet. Here we are passing in the program ID, the IDL, and storing all that information within program. So if that exists, if there is a program with all those information and all matches up, and we have a public key, all right, so if that program exists and we are connected with our wallet address and transaction is not pending, right? There's no ongoing transactions, and transaction pending is just a state. Don't need to worry about it. We want to do something. So if we have if the smart contract exists, if there is a public key that exists, And if there's nothing pending right now, let's go ahead and do a try catch. Okay, so the catch, if there's an error, right, we just, for now, let's just console log error. What's the error? Okay, cool, awesome. For the try though, what we want to try is, for one, set loading to true. Okay, so if you remember in our index, we have this loading, and this loading is a component, and the loading.js, it basically just says loading, right? When there's a transaction happening, we have some reusable UI that just indicates, hey, something is loading. So something is loading. And while something is loading, here is the fun part. We're gonna say const profile PDA and profile bump, all right? This is called destructuring. And we're gonna destructure find program address sync. And that is a function, and it's gonna take in an array of UTF-8.encode user state, right? Where have we seen that before? All right, user state, all right? And then from there, we want public key dot to buffer. And we also want to close this bracket right here, and then comma program dot program ID. Okay, cool. So that's that. All right, from there, let's say const profile account, right, is equal to, oh wait, again, program dot account dot user profile dot fetch, right? And here's where we're gonna put the profile PDA. Okay, you guys got that? Cool. So essentially, we're gonna get PDA and bump from our program, and then from there, we're going to get the profile account is going to be equal to what we get back from fetching it. So this is our fetch right here. So we're fetching to see if that user is initialized. If not, right, it's not gonna go through. So if they were able to get data, right? Remember when we did fetch, we saw nothing sometimes because there was no user, but when there was a user, we were able to see one object. So essentially, if there is a profile account, right, we're going to set the last to do. Remember what last to do is, right? And if profile account holds the user profile, how do I get the last to do of the user profile? It's going to be profile.account.last to do, right? So if you understood the structures before, we're kind of taking what we know about the structures and getting what we need. So I'm setting the last to do in my state. And then you want to set initialize to true, because if there is an account, that means they're already initialized. We can set that to true. And then after that, we can say, so we have the account initialized. We now want to get all the to-dos with that account. So let's say const to do equals await program, right? Our program dot account dot to do account, right? This should probably be dot to do account. Yep, that's what it's called. Dot all, right? This is like the fetch all button that you saw. And now we're going to implement something called an author filter, right? That's given. You don't have to worry too much about what it does at the moment, right? If you look under, I believe, utils, index, yeah, there's the author filter. All right, we're using that here. That's just going to help us get what we need. And within author filter, pass in the public key dot to string. It just helps us get what we need. Okay. Okay. So if this works, we should have all the to-dos associated with our authority. And if we do have those, we want to set our state to do accounts. All right. I don't know if you remember earlier, this use effect, it had set to-dos to dummy to-dos, right? That was the static data, right? That's what we were setting to-dos for. Now that we have actual data that we can look at, we can set this to do accounts. There we go. All right, and then we can have an else statement here. If there is no profile account, let's set initialized to false. That means, hey, you connected your Phantom wallet, but you never initialized the user just yet. All right, so this is all setup stuff. Okay, so then the error console log catch error. We also can set initialize to false here. And we can set the to-dos, right? If there's a failure, should we pass in to-do accounts? No, we should pass in empty array. There's also a finally here, right? When it's all said and done, set loading to false, right? Because we're done loading something. Awesome. And then when that's done, it's the if statement. This is the function, right? All we did was write the function find profile accounts. We haven't exactly called it, so let's call it here, find profile accounts. And from here, we can say public key, right? This is called the dependency module, and whatever changes, if this changes, useEffect will run again. So if we change wallets, it's gonna fetch for us. All right, if the smart contract program changes, it's gonna fetch the to-dos. If for whatever reason a transaction is pending, it will change the to-dos. All right, it will fetch the to-dos again. All right, so this is how it's gonna automatically load it without us refreshing every single time. So that's the reason for this useEffect. Let's go ahead and hit save. And the last thing we're gonna need is to bring find profile accounts all the way to the bottom. Actually, I take that back. We actually don't need to bring it. The useEffect is just gonna run because we're running use to do. So this should be fine. Another thing that I wanna do is if it's initialized, right? Then let's show the array, right? Else console log not yet initialized. So we should see this if the useEffect is running properly. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open up Solana Playground and let's see if it works. Okay, so if you wanna run your program, we can use Yarndev, but since we also installed Netlify, we can also do NTLDev. Oops, NTLDev. Cool. Awesome, it's gonna open it up for us. When you use NTLDev, it's on 8888. There we go. So let's select the wallet. Let's click Phantom. It's gonna ask me for my password. Connect. There we go. Okay, cool. So let's inspect element here. Let's see if the useEffect is running properly. Account does not exist. That makes sense. Well, that's actually good. It's actually true. There is no error. This is coming from our console log. Okay, awesome. And as you can see at the moment, if I click initialize, it doesn't actually use our Solana Playground initialize user. It's using the static one, which is just gonna load to-dos. But we removed the dummy to-dos, so that's why we don't see anything here. So let's set up initialize user function now. All right, so before we get started, let's quickly understand how this works. So what I'm gonna do is let's make the code bigger, and we wanna initialize user. So what function initializes the user? Well, we have one here, initialize static user, right? So this is what's happening in our code. I hit refresh, I can hit initialize, and this is what happens. Just set initialize to true. That's not really helpful when we're gonna connect our code to the blockchain. What we do want, right, let's get rid of this guy. Or we can't get rid of this guy just yet. We gotta make a new function, right? We're gonna say const initialize, not static user, just initialize user itself, okay? And this function is gonna be asynchronous because we're gonna need to make a function call to the blockchain, right? We gotta wait for a response, okay? So in this function, the first thing you wanna do is check if, the program exists, and wallet is connected, like there is a public key connected, right? Then, right, we want to run initialize user from smart contract, right? This is the one that we made on Solana Playground. We run this initialize user. This front end function calls the back end function. Does that make sense? Cool. It's not gonna look exactly like this, but that's the gist of it. Okay. So let's go ahead and do that. The first thing we're gonna do is if program and public key, so both have to exist. We're gonna do a try catch, right? Error, boom. Awesome. So we have a try catch just like that. And for the error, for now, let's just console.log the error. Okay. And then for the try, what we want to do is one, set transaction pending to true, right? Because now there's a transaction pending. And while the transaction is pending, we need to do the find program address sync thing again. So let's do const, let's get the profile PDA again. So to do that, we need profile PDA, comma, profile bump. Then we can say equals find program address sync. And this is where we add the UTF encode stuff. So we can do the brackets. All this is lets our front end understand what's coming through. So we're gonna encode the user state, comma, and then we're gonna public key dot to buffer, okay, close the bracket, program.program ID. That's it. Cool. So now that we have that done, here is where we're going to start making that transaction. So to do that, we can say const tx is equal to, and tx stands for the transaction. The transaction we want is to await program. And remember, when I say program, what does that mean? That means the program that I wrote, right? The one that I wrote in constants, all right? Program dot methods. All right, this is how we can get access to our smart contract functions. Yeah. So dot methods, right? And from here, we can do any method we want. So we can do initialize user, for example, right? And call it like this, right? You can even format it like this, just like how we did in our smart contract, same thing. Initialize user, right? So we're calling the initialize user function. Here we put any arguments does it take in. Remember the arguments that it takes in? It doesn't take any besides context. Here's our context. We're gonna do dot accounts, right? Object here, user profile is equal to the profile PDA. The authority is gonna be a public key, and the system program is gonna be the system program dot program ID. Okay, so essentially this is our context, and then from there we want to do dot RPC. All right, all of this just to connect to the blockchain. So this is our backend stuff. This is us interacting with the backend. You got it? So after that's all said and done, all right, we can go ahead and we can go set initialized to true, right? Because if this is successful, right, we're waiting for this to run. If it's successful, then that means we successfully created a user. This is us like running the test, except, you know, real life. And then we have toast here. Remember, it helps us give messages. We can say successfully initialized. Okay, and that's it for the try. For the error, we can add that toast now. Toast.error, error.toString, whatever the error is, and then stringify it. And then there is a finally that we can add here. We can set transaction pending to false. Okay, and that should be it for initialize user. Now, here's the next part. It's important you understand this because we're going to repeat this process for the rest of our smart contract functions. For initialize user, right, you can see it's grayed out. Right? We defined what the function is, but we haven't passed it down. Right? So if I go down here, this is where we're going to return everything I want to bring out of this file. So as you can see, right, initialize static user was passed down, and that's why I can use it on my app. So if I want to add a new thing in here, I can put comma initialize user. All right, save that. Boom. Now my question is to you guys, can I initialize the user now using the smart contract? Let's click on it. Nothing, right? Why though? Why is it still doing this static initialize? Well, that's because if you guys go over to your index.js, not this one, the page index, you'll see something, right? When I click initialize on click, what happens? So let's find that button. The button should be right here. All right, here's the initialize button. And let's look at the on click. The on click is initialize. Oh, it's glitching out. Initialize static user. That's why it's not running a Solana transaction. All right, so how can I make it turn into the regular one? Can I just do this? Right? Not quite, because it's gonna say, give us an error. It's gonna be like initialize user is undefined, unless I defined it earlier. All right, that's fine. Oh, okay, cool. So initialize static user is grayed out, but we still have, where is it? Initialize user. Oh, spelled it wrong. Yeah, doesn't exist. All right, so if I click it, yeah, initialize user is not defined. How can I bring initialize user here? Do you remember our custom hook used to do? Everything we returned is up here. Just add it onto here. So just say initialize user, hit save. Now let's make this bigger. All right, so let's just do the whole process again. I refresh, right? The first thing our app does, it checks if a wallet is connected, and if it is, it's gonna get the to-dos, if it's initialized. All right, so let's connect our wallet. Okay, we're connected, right? But there's no user associated. If I click inspect element, I hit console, well, not source, it's console. There's no account that exists with this, right? So if I hit initialize, oh, initialize user is not a function. That's not good. So that's our first error. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Initialize user is not a function. Let's go back here. Yep, spelled it wrong here. That would help. Initialize. Okay, now let's save it. Right. That's why spelling is important, guys. Let's hit initialize. And we should get a different error now. Program methods initialize user. See, look, the spelling on my code is wrong too. So let's go back there. Let's go to to-dos. Yeah, so I'm trying to call a method called entail. Right, so it needs I. Right, because in our Solana Playground, everything is spelled correctly. So let's hit save. All right, make this guy bigger. Let's try this one more time. All right, so after I fixed all the spelling, click this button. Hey, okay, look, this is our transaction right here. And it's asking us to sign and approve that we want to initialize a user. Let's hit approve. Okay, let's hit refresh. Hey, okay, it was supposed to refresh it on its own, but sometimes the state glitches, right? But as you can see, we don't have the initialize button anymore. Why not? Because if the user exists, we don't see initialize button. That's it, right? If I refresh this now, no initialize button, right? You saw it for a second, but then it updated. If I disconnect my wallet and refresh, there's an initialize button, but I can't initialize, right? Unless I'm connected, right? So that's all we did. That's the setup we did, right? It's already initialized. When I connect my wallet, we're good to go. Right, so we can successfully initialize a user with our front end. You know, a cool part about what we just did is that we just have to repeat that process for all the other methods, right? So we successfully are able to initialize a user, right? But if I do something like this and hit enter, right, this isn't gonna work anymore. Right? We can't add it to do anymore because we're not working with static data. We're working with the blockchain, right? So let's go ahead and do that. So what we can do, we can make this guy smaller again. We can actually just make this completely smaller and just work with the code. Okay, cool. So we initialize the user. Let's go ahead and add a to-do. Let's add that functionality in. All right, so above add static to-do, we're gonna make another function called add to-do. Right, so add to-do is our front end function that's gonna call our method on the blockchain. All right, so it's asynchronous. And again, same checks here. If there's a program, if there's a wallet, all right, let's do something. And what we want to do is a try catch with an error. And with that error, we can just console log it. And I can set up the next thing. We're going to use toast dot error is whatever the error is dot to string. Okay, awesome. So what do we want to try with add to do? If you take a look at initialize user, what do we do after in this try catch? All right, it's going to be a lot of the same thing. So what we need to do in this try is just set transaction pending to true, right? Did I send it to false later? Initialize user, set transaction. Oh yeah, to false. Okay, for now it's true, right? Because we're running a transaction. Okay, and then after that we need the PDA stuff, right? We need to get the user profile. So let's get const profile PDA and the profile bump. And this is going to equal the same thing as before. Find program address, this long thing. Let's just paste it. Okay. Okay. And then we also want to get all the to-do accounts. So in this next line, we're going to say const to do PDA to do bump, right? And this is going to be equal to the same thing. I'm going to just paste it because it's pretty long. Oops. It's going to be this right here. I'm gonna just paste it because it's gonna be pretty long, but I'll just explain it to you. It's find program address sync again. We're gonna encode it to get something understandable. This time we want to do state, right? Because it's a do account. Still buffer the public key, and we just need to get the uint8 array, from last to do, right? So don't need to worry about it. We're just getting the last to do for later, and awesome. Another thing that we're gonna need is the const content. Right? Well, actually, no, we don't even need content anymore. We want to get the input from that form that we had to write. Remember that input field and I wrote like learn Solana on it? We want to get that input and attach it to our add to do method call. You understand what I said? Let's see if you do. All right, so if you remember, let's bring back our front end. If you remember, this input field, right? If I write something like finish connecting front end, right? Whatever I just wrote is stored in a state called input, right? So that means there's a string out there called finish connecting front end in a state called input. And that state is also existing here. There's an input state, right? So theoretically, if I were to console log input, you'd see the finish hooking up front end or whatever, right? So that's what we need to know. So let's take what we know with that. And what we want to say is here, if there is an input, right? If there's no text in there, right? This isn't gonna run, but if there is text in there, what we want to do now is set, actually no, if there's an input, right? We should be able to just call the method. So let's just say await program dot methods, right? And then we can do dot add to do, right? I think I'm gonna have to make this asynchronous, no? Okay, cool. Dot add to do, right? Because that's what it's called. Let's put a capital here. We're gonna put parentheses, and it's gonna take in, it's gonna take in one parameter. Do you remember what parameter add to do takes? Right, it's gonna take in content. So what we're gonna put as content then? Input, right? Because we're gonna add it to do. So if there is something in that input field, take whatever in there and run it as content for the add to do. All right, that's all it is. So then we can just do dot accounts, right? So here's our context, and we can say the user profile is profile PDA, right? Just like before. This time it's different because we have a to do account now. So to do account is whatever we grabbed here, right? To do PDA, and the authority is still our public key. So we can still write public key here. And the system program, not that one, system program is system program dot program ID. Awesome. Okay. Last thing, we need to do .rpc here. Okay, that's necessary. And after that, we can do toast.success. Successfully added to do. Hey, all right, let's put a period here. Okay, I think that's it for that. Now it's just up to the input. Okay, cool. So if there's an input, run the add to do, pass in the input. Here's the context, RPC success. Okay, that should work. Looks good to me. Toast error, and then just the finally here. Let's do finally, and let's do set transaction pending to false, right? Because there shouldn't be a transaction pending anymore. Awesome. So we have the add to do, but you see it's grayed out. Why is it grayed out? Right? Why is it grayed out? That's because we need to return it. So next to initialize user, let's add to do. All right. If you return it here, right, back in your index page, guys, at the top, make sure add to do exists here as well. So let's check. We have add to do, right? We have mark to do and we have remove to do already set up for you guys. Right, as you can see, they're still grayed out. So how can we implement it? All you need to do is find where add static to do is. Okay, let's find it. It should be in the form. There it is. So add static to do. We don't need this anymore. We want add to do. We want to run that function instead. Makes sense? Okay, let's just test out our app. All right, let's do this. Awesome. And let's just run through the whole process, right? So let's disconnect real quick, refresh, boom. We can't initialize because our wallet's not connected. Select wallet, select phantom, and let's say my first to do. Let's hit enter. What just happened, right? So that's our first error. You saw that it refreshed. Why did it refresh though? Why do you think it refreshed? Right? It refreshed because if you look on index, let me make it easier for you guys to see. If you look at index, there's a form here and it's on submit. Every time we submit something with a form, it's gonna automatically refresh. That's the behavior of submitting, right? But we don't want that behavior, so we can actually do something pretty cool. So if you notice on the static version of this function, we're passing in an E for event and doing something called e.prevent default. Right, it's gonna prevent the default action of that function. So for the default action of a form is refreshing. So we need to add that here as well. So let's add E, and then from there we can do e.prevent default, save, right? And that should carry over, right? Since we passed it all down. And now let's hit refresh just to make sure. And let's do create to do. Let's just do create to do for simplicity. Let's hit enter now. Hey, our transaction is there. We're gonna spend this much Solana. It's not a lot at all, right? So that we can store this to do on chain, right? It's actually connected to a backend. Sick. So let's hit approve, and now let's see if it works. That was interesting, right? You saw a little something happen over there, right? And we also saw that the create to do is still here, right? This is all part of the learning experience. But as you can see, create to do is there now. And when I refresh, that disappears. We can make this more smoother, right? By playing with our states. So let's go back to add to do real quick, right? Add static to do. Notice how we set input to clear, right? So if it's successful, we can set transaction to false and set input to clear, right? It's gonna clear that input for us, right? So now that that's there, let's see, let's add another one. Let's say master Solana. Hit enter, hit approve. Hey, look at that, right? It cleared our input because that's what the line that we just added. And it set transaction pending to true, and now it's automatically updated, right? We can add to-dos. This is awesome, right? Can we mark to-dos though? Well, we can, but this is only on the front end. If I were to, fetch this to-do account, it's still gonna say, false, right? When I refresh, you can see that's not actually completing them. Does that make sense? So that means we have to update it on the back end. All right, so luckily we have a function that we created already that's gonna do just that. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, let's go ahead and do the next function. I'm gonna make this bigger. Perfect. So we add to do. Now we wanna be able to mark it to do on the back end, right? Because we can only change it on the front end. So let's go ahead, const mark to do is equal to an asynchronous function like so. One thing that we will need to pass in for mark to do is the to do PDA, right? We need to know it's the to do account associated, right? What to do account, or essentially what to do, and what to do index. This is just parameters. They don't mean anything just yet. Okay, cool. The rest is pretty standard. We're gonna do the if program thing again and public key. Okay, then we do a try catch. The error is gonna be the same as the other ones. We're gonna do the console.log error, and we're also gonna run toast.error is going to be, error going to be error.toString, like that. Okay, awesome. And then for the try, we have to get the profile PDA again. And we don't necessarily need the to do PDA this time. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're gonna do, what did I do again? Let me see. Set transaction pending. Okay, cool, I remember now. We wanna set transaction pending again to true. We wanna set loading, right? Because this might take a while, so let's set loading to true. And let's get our const profile PDA again and profile bump. And again, if you notice, we're not really using bump. It's just there in case we need it. So you can remove it if you want. So find program address sync. It's gonna be the same thing as previously. All right. We're gonna get user state, public key to buffer, and program ID. Awesome. Let me just double check to make sure that's correct. Find program address sync. Okay, that looks right to me. Awesome. So remember, after we usually do this, here is where we're gonna call our method from our smart contract. So to do that, let's do an await here. Await program is the program. To get all the functions in that program, you say .methods, right? Then you can hit enter here, and then you can say the method that you want to call, which was mark to do. Okay, and mark to do is going to take in what? Do you remember? Think back to our Solana Playground. What did it take in? It took in to do IDX. All right, cool. And for the accounts, right, it's just going to be the user profile PDA. Cool part is, to do account, it's just going to take in the to do PDA parameter. There you go. Now it's not gray anymore. Okay, and then for the authority, all right, it's going to be public key, and for the system program dot program ID. Alrighty, so that is it. Is there anything else we need to do, guys? Yes, you didn't let me down, Mark. it's going to be .rpc. All right, shout out to all the marks. So we do toast.success, and then we can do here string successfully marked to do, exclamation point, because I'm excited. So let's hit save. And oh yeah, we need the finally here, because finally, when it's done, we're gonna set loading to false, and we're gonna set transaction pending to false as well. Okay. Now we wrote the instructions for this function, but it's still gray because we're not using it anywhere. How do we use it? Add it to the return, or add it to the tally. All right, so add it to the tally, mark to do, hit save, and if every time you return something here, you have to pull it out to where you want to use it. So are we saying mark to do here? And I think we are. Yes, we are. Oops, sorry guys. Yes, we are. Mark to do right there. All right, it's grayed out because I haven't used it in my code. So let's figure out where were you saying mark to do. So think back to our parent-child relationship. All right. Can I find mark to do an index? You want a reference to the app? Let's take a look. All right, can I find this mark to do button in my index? No, I can't, because there's a to do section here. All right, so let's go to to do section then. So let's go to do section. All right, the child of index is to do section. Okay, and notice how it's passing in an action. The action is going to be mark to do. How do I know? Go back to index. All right, look at this. First to do section, I'm passing the incomplete to dos, and the action that I'm passing is mark static to do. For the completed to do section, I'm passing remove static to do. So this is the one I'm working on. So the first thing I want to do is take out this static to do and now put mark to do. And that's our action now, right? So when I go to this component, underneath, like if you open this action up, you'd see that it actually says mark to do, right? So we're taking that mark to do and passing it into to-do list. Follow that graph. If you have it handy, go ahead and open it up. So it's going to do list, right? Notice how it's still action. So underneath action, if you open it up, it's still marked to do. And let's see, where is the action? And it's gonna go into to do item, and we're passing that action. So we pass down props like 3 times, right? So that means all the way at the bottom of to do item is right here. Cool. And if you remember, here's a memory test. Mark to do takes in how many parameters or arguments? Takes in 2. Right, we wrote it as to do PDA, right? Or in other words, you can just write public key here, okay? We can say public key because we're also passing that down, all right? And just for the sake of simplicity, we also want that public key for removing it to do. So for mark to do, it's gonna be this. For public key, it's gonna be this, okay? Awesome. Okay, so now we're talking, right? We're passing in 2 things. Mark to do is set up. Now it's the moment of truth, okay? Let's go ahead and bring this guy in. Let's do something like this. Cool. So which one do you want to mark, guys? You want to master Solana? All right, let's see if that works. Let's click on this. Hey, so see this loading right here? That's our loading state component loading in. And here, right, we can store, or not store, but we're going to mark that to do item as true. So if it's true, it should move down. Is that proof? Let's go. Master Solana is completed. And remember that problem when I refreshed, it goes back. Let's hit it again, refresh. It's still completed because our backend, our to-do account on the blockchain is telling us that it's still completed. It's persisting. So that's awesome. And I'm not going to be able to delete a to-do because it's not set up yet. So that's the last function. Are you guys ready for the last hook? After this, we're pretty much done. All right, everyone, we're in the end game now. So I moved back to our to-do.js. Right, I'm above remove static to do in line 245 for me. And all we need to do is say const remove to do, right? We don't want the static one this time. And say async. It's gonna take 2 parameters again. To do PDA is what we'll call it, and to do IDX. All right, from there, we're just gonna set up the skeleton of the function like this. And let's write the logic. All right, as you can see, all of the heavy lifting is on the smart contract itself. So all we need to do is hook it up. So if you say if program again, and the usual if public key as well. What do we do next? Set transaction pending to true. What else do we do, guys? What else do we need? Any states that we need to update while we're here? Yes. set loading. A lot of coding is actually patterns. All right, so if you follow this pattern, what should come next? Exactly, you want the profile PDA. So I'm just gonna paste that here because it's the same thing I wrote every single time. Const profile PDA and bump, and then just do find program address sync and get all of this stuff good to go. Awesome. So if we have those, we can say await program. What's program? All right, it's the Solana program we wrote together. If I want to get the functions from that program, since it's public, we can do .methods, and here we can do .remove to do. And this is going to take in a parameter. If you remember, think back to Solana Playground. All right, it takes in the to do IDX. All right, so this is not grayed out anymore. Cool. And for the accounts, right, we're going to do a dot accounts here. This is essentially the context. If we say user profile is the profile PDA, the to do account is going to be the to do PDA that we pass in. All right. It's not going to be called to do PDA. It's going to be called the public key. Later on, you'll see the authority colon public key, and we just need system program, I believe. So let's do system program like so, and capital S system program dot program ID, and voila. Okay, so after dot accounts, there's one more thing we do, dot RPC, and we just use toast dot success. You can say successfully removed to do. Okay, and after that, oh, I forgot, guys. Why don't you say something? This should all be under a try. All right, so all that code we just wrote, copy it all the way up from toast to set transaction, cut, go over here, paste. That's all in a try, right? And we want to catch an error. If there's an error, we're just going to console log it. It's all the same stuff as before. Toast.error, and we can say error.toString, and yeah, cool. So then we got finally again, we can say set loading is what, guys? Is it false or true? All right, false. You got it. I almost tricked myself. Set transaction pending though is false or true? False. Hey, okay. That's it. That's it for remove to do. It's grayed out because we didn't use it anywhere else. We just wrote the instructions. We want to go over here, put comma, remove to do. Okay. Okay. After that, where do we need to go? Right. We are exporting it on our hook. Now we need to place it where it's relevant. And remember, I already set it up for you. Remove to do is right here. Still grayed out though. Where do we need to replace it? Where do we need to replace it? You see it over here. So it's very similar in terms of passing it down, just like mark to do. We want to put remove to do right here. So remove the static word. This is our new function, our bigger and more awesome function, remove to do. Okay. Are we done? Yes or no? All right. If you said yes, you got it. Why are we done though? Because the way we set it up to pass it down, it's still consistent. It's reusable. It's nice and dynamic. Let's prove it. So I'm passing an action prop called remove to do as an action prop, and it's going to go into do section. So remember that for later. Remove to do has a new name. It's called action. So we go to the to do component, go to the do section, and now we're getting that action, right? And we're taking it and passing it down to its child to do list. And we're going to call that action action, still action. Okay, so to do list. So in to do list, take that action, pass it to do item as action, keeping the same name. Okay, and then from to do list, we got to do item. The action is gonna run handle remove to do, a different one, and this is the actual function itself. Okay, this is the remove to do, just renamed. Right, it has two names, and pass in public key and IDX. That's still the same. So this is essentially the same thing, except here we can identify if it's remove to do. Right, the trash icon should remove it to do, and the other button should add it to do. Well, not add it to, mark it to do. Right, handle mark to do right here. Okay, if you notice, I didn't add any new code here. Right, I just walked you through how it's getting passed down. So let's bring back our front end or our local host. It's gonna say remove to do is not defined. That's fine. It might be because of spelling. Let's go back to index remove to do. Is it on here? I could have sworn it was on here. Remove to do. Is that the same? Oh yeah, it should be defined. So that must mean in our to-do.js. Oh, removed to do. There we go. Let's save that. And that would definitely help. And now, no more errors. All right. So what we need to do now is let's refresh this just for safety. And if this works, we're done. So let's click the trash icon, approve transaction. And look at this, we get the Solana back we used to store that account. Because remember, we're closing the account. All right, so we're gonna get some back, we're gonna approve. And there you go, we only have one to-do item. Let's freaking go, guys. We finished the to-do app. You made it this far into the video. All we have to do left is let's celebrate by pushing our changes to your repo. All right, so we don't lose anything. Let's go ahead and do that now. Let's do this. And let's go ahead and say get status. All right, you can see all the things we changed. We added a lot. It's been a while since we did this. Get add, get commit, and we can just, it only has one commit message, finish to do app. Hopefully you guys stopped and pushed your changes while I was teaching. So let's do git push now. Awesome. And since we pushed to our repo, guess what? When you go back to here, go to your Netlify. Let's go to Netlify. Let's log in. Let's go with GitHub. Our Solana To Do app should be building now. See how it's automatically building? Our live site is updating to the latest version of our repo. And once that's done, you have your live To Do app and it should work just like this. And again, quick demo. If I disconnect, you'll go back to the normal page. Oops. Oh yeah, that's right. We gotta make sure we're still running. So let's go back real quick. Let's do a NTL dev. Okay, NTL dev, open this up for us. Okay, and you can see it's nothing. And if I connect my wallet, that's wallet number 4. But what if I used a different wallet? Let's try wallet number 3. I have less Solana here. Let's refresh just in case. Let's hit select wallet. And let's put in the password for wallet number 3. And let's prove this, connect, and bam. If you remember, we only had one to do in wallet number 4. But as you can see, there's no to-dos, right? Because every wallet that connects to our app is gonna have their own set of to-do accounts. How awesome is that? We did that using the Solana blockchain. So let's approve, right? There you go. And let's say unique to-do. And let's hit approve, unique to-do. All right, let's disconnect. All right, let's switch to wallet number 4 again. Let's see if we see that. Cool, connect wallet. Bam, no unique to-do. That's it, guys. You made a successful Solana To Do dApp all in one go. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. My goal with these is if you learned anything at all, even if it's just a little bit, I'm happy. So stay tuned for our next Solana video and see you guys in the next one. Peace.